Part 55. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 565. I don't understand what you mean. What do you plan to do? Kaylan said sincerely. If you can come up with a reliable plan, I can consider joining you. After all, I don't want to be locked up here waiting to die. He looked directly into the other person's eyes, and the other person was also observing the changes in emotions in his eyes. This stalemate lasted for a full 30 seconds before the lean boy said word by word in a deep voice, "If I say that there is a God in this world, a real, great God, do you believe?" As expected. Ian's heart moved slightly. He really caught this fish by himself. Is it some myth or legend? He deliberately pretended to be puzzled and shook his head slightly. To be honest, I don't really believe it. If he said what he believed all at once, it would easily arouse suspicion, so it was better to continue to put out the line. Anyway, the big fish had already bit the hook, so he was not in a hurry to bring it out of the water immediately. Sometimes, being too impatient would make it easy, causing the fish to break free of the hook, or even break the line. Then why do you think the Alpha people gave up the resources on the surface of this planet and slept for tens of thousands of years? The lean boy continued to induce. Because the body structure needs a long hibernation. Kaylan followed the previous hibernation theory line of thinking. Wrong, completely wrong. The lean boy shook his head vigorously. No matter how weak the bodies of the Alphas are, they are still much stronger than us humans. Why do they need to survive on this planet where we humans can survive? What about hibernation? And it's hibernation that lasts for tens of thousands of years. Hearing what the other party said, Kaylan couldn't help but be speechless. Isn't this using one's own spear to attack one's own shield? This guy just said that the Alphas have not disappeared, but are hibernating deep in the planet. Now he is saying that with the physical fitness of the Alphas, there is no need to hibernate. In fact, this is what the original hibernation theory was falsified. One of the most important points. Although humans are not sure what kind of creatures the Alphas are at all, judging from the remains they left behind, the appearance, habits and social structure of this creature should be very close to humans, and their physical strength is far above humans. With their technological level and the natural conditions on Alpha Planet, they don't need to hibernate at all, unless the Alphas were forced to sleep underground. The lean boy expressed Ian's guess, because they offended the god. This is not the first time Kaylan has heard such a statement, but the last time he saw similar remarks was in a purely fictitious online novel. But from another perspective, if this great god really exists, then this kind of speculation can really be justified. It's just that most humans in this era are atheists and do not believe in the existence of any gods. So I think this speculation is pure nonsense. But he is not fictional. Kaylan has even experienced his attention personally. That feeling cannot be described in words. Just the glance of one of his countless eyes is enough to distort the physical rules of this universe. Apart from God, Kaylan didn't know what other words in human language could describe that kind of existence. The great god gave up on the Alphas, which resulted in them living underground like insects, but since they dare to come out of the ground, as long as we humans are willing to offer our piety to that god, these Alphas will not be enough for fear. We humans will become the new masters of this planet. The missionary work is good, Kaylan muttered in his heart. The prophet should really give this kid 2 chicken drumsticks. Of course, it was impossible for him to say that. Kaylan showed a look of surprise at first, and then the surprise turned into confusion and confusion. He sat there in a daze for more than a minute before finally speaking. He said, where did you hear this? Is it true? From the perspective of others, it seemed as if he had just digested the huge amount of information in this passage, and the questions raised were things that an ordinary person would most likely care about. This is the oracle received by the prophet. He is the only person who can communicate directly with the great gods. When mentioning the prophet, a look of fanaticism appeared in the skinny boy's eyes. The prophet told me, as long as they are pious enough, any believer can gain the gaze of the great God. But he must not have told you what the price of such gaze is. Kalan cursed. But, how can this prophet, and that great God you mentioned, help us? Kalan narrowed his eyes. No matter how pious you are, a flesh and blood body can't block metal bullets, right? Why not? The lean boy suddenly widened his eyes. Waiting, you will be able to see the real miracle, but before that, I need you to spread this news as secretly as possible among the crowd. Come on, when the time comes, I will use his power to defeat the rabble without faith, and then you can rush out with these people. Among this group of people, there is indeed a black-robed bishop. As for who they are, how many, are still unknown, but no matter what, it is always correct to regard each of these people as a ticking bomb. There are a total of 12 people in this group of relic hunters, which exactly correspond to the 12 apostles of Jesus in the Christianity of the Old Era. I don't know if this is purely a coincidence, or if it has some special religious significance. Kalan was already sure that they were planning a riot, using the power of the Holy Word to confuse thousands of civilians in this temporary shelter, and then inciting these civilians to attack the blockade outside. But Kalan, what is uncertain is whether the ship-wide blockade was part of the heretic sect's plan, or whether they took advantage of this opportunity to improvise and want to cause as much damage as possible inside the Ark. Will the casualties be heavy? Kalan couldn't help but ask. Sacrificing one's life for one's faith is the end of the glory of life. The lean boy now looked like a real stickman. Kalan couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Such a teenage boy, they are not deeply involved in the world, and their thoughts are more susceptible to influence from the outside world. They are the kind of group that is most easily brainwashed. Once this kind of thinking is ingrained in their minds, it is almost impossible to bring them back to the right path. The best way to deal with such people is to send them to see the great God they believe in. I want to go to the toilet. Kalan just stood up. The big man who gave him a seat earlier grabbed his wrist, stared at him fiercely, and said, "You must be scared and want to report something, right?" Before Kalan had time to answer, a gloomy voice suddenly came from the side. "This little brother's identity is not ordinary. I'm afraid he is not the same as you." The middle-aged white-collar man who took the initiative to talk to Kalan quietly moved over at some point and said, "I watched him come in just now, and the group of soldiers simply invited this little brother in respectfully. With his status, he probably won't be willing to take this risk with you." "What?" The lean boy's face changed slightly, and he turned to look at Kalan. "Aren't you a ruin hunter?" "No, I am," Kalan said, "but he is right about one thing. You and I are not the same people." At this point, Kalan felt that there was no need to continue acting with the other party. The only thing that made him feel a little ridiculous was that the IQ of this group of people was really low, and a random passerby would reveal all his plans. This is no different from the villains in anime who plot loudly. As for the bishop in black among this group of people, it is not that there is no solution. Just when the lean boy was staring at him with an uncertain expression, Kalan made a standard counter-attack and threw the big man who grabbed his wrist to the ground. He took out a dagger and stabbed it through the back of the neck. The tip of the dagger came out of the big man's throat in an instant, and the middle-aged man nearby was so frightened that he sat down on the ground and opened his mouth wide. He wanted to scream, but found that he had completely lost it. The control of the throat can only produce the sound of ho-ho. "Why do you have weapons on you?" the lean boy said in shock. Another relic hunter stood up and wanted to rush towards Kalan, but was kicked away by Valentina, who suddenly jumped up. The alloy prosthetic limb was used. The entire cheek of the relic hunter who was kicked was sunken, blood with pieces of flesh spewed out from the nostrils, and one eyeball on one side was squeezed out of the socket, hanging on the outside. You will bear the wrath of the great God, I." As soon as he said the word "I," Kalan had already pulled out his pistol and pulled the trigger 3 times in a row. Ba! 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 He also used the Mozambican shooting method. 2 bullets penetrated his chest, and the last one hit the front door. The lean boy didn't say anything in the end and fell down on his back. After knowing the identities of Kaylan and others, the soldiers naturally would not confiscate all their weapons like ordinary people. Kaylan kept his gun in the holster under his ribs and opened his clothes. Just draw your gun and shoot. This is also one of the reasons why he dares to directly conflict with the opponent. The sound of gunfire immediately attracted the garrison soldiers in the distance, but it also caused panic among the people. Exclamations came and went, and many people got up and ran outside. Faced with this chaos, the soldiers we can only maintain order first and stop those who want to break through the blockade. Although shooting would cause riots, it also bought Kaylan dozens of seconds. After killing the lean boy, he quickly said to 33, "It's up to you, there are 9 left. Personally, can you solve it?" Able. As he spoke, the thin black blade that appeared in the hotel shot out from his fingers again, and the 2 members of the heretic sect who had just stood up fell straight down. "Try to keep them alive as long as they can't make a sound," Kaylan added. Although using the language of Alpha civilization does not require human vocal organs, for ordinary people who have not mastered Alpha language, if they want to activate the holy word, they still have to recite those simulated syllables with their mouths. As long as they can silence them and they lose the ability to use the word. Of course, the premise is that before they start reciting the holy word, this thing is like a forbidden spell in a certain game setting. The caster can be silenced in advance, but if they start reading the chant again, interruption will lead to various unpredictable consequences. At least it is equivalent to detonating a grenade in the crowd, and at worst the entire temporary shelter will be directly destroyed. If you get lucky, maybe the entire ark will be involved, although the chance is lower than winning the lottery jackpot. It's not like that has never happened. For example, if the small-scale space storm that exceeded everyone's expectations had occurred inside the ark. Several more thin black blades flew out from 33rd's hands. These thin black blades accurately cut the throats and vocal cords of the heretical sect members, but avoided the fatal large blood vessels as much as possible. Like this, first of all, these guys with their throats cut can live for at least 10 minutes, if they can get timely treatment, there is a high probability that they can save their lives. Kaylan threw the member of the heretical sect closest to him to the ground and blocked his throat with the muzzle of his gun. At this time, Kaylan seemed to have remembered something and lowered his voice. The person asked in his ear, "Leave the bed." The man's struggle suddenly stopped, his eyes widened, and his throat kept moving, as if he wanted to tell Kaylan something. Does this guy know the hidden meaning of the sentence? Kaylan just had an idea and suddenly decided to use this code word to test it. Unexpectedly, the other party actually responded to the sentence. He pulled out his gun and was about to ask again, but who knew that the first word the man spoke was, "God." He was not speaking human language, but using syllables that humans could pronounce to imitate the words in Alpha language. Kaylan was shocked and pulled the trigger right in his face. Unexpectedly, blood was splashed on his face. After the black-robed bishop's holy words were interrupted, his whole body seemed to have been in an ultra-high temperature incinerator, and he instantly turned into ashes. A pile of charred powder spread out, but his underwear and Kaylan pressing on him were not damaged at all. Huh. Kaylan couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that at the critical moment, the goddess of luck was still on her side. P.S. Thanks to Sexy Cucumber for the 5,000 starting coins. Brother, your ID is really cool. If this chapter is blocked because of your ID, you have to take full responsibility. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 566. Kaylan picked up a handful of charred powder with his fingers, but before he could take a closer look, the powder turned into finer dust, slipped from his fingers, and dissipated in the flowing air. This black-robed bishop seemed as if he had never appeared in this world before. He disappeared without a trace in just a few seconds, leaving only an empty shell of clothes spread out on the ground. It proves in vain that a living person once existed here. Kaylan raised his head and glanced at the members of the heretical sect lying on the ground around him. After 33 slit their throats with a flying knife, in order to completely lose the ability of these people to resist desperately, 33 even cut off their hand tendons with a follow-up knife. This group of people were lying on the ground in a mess, twisting and struggling, because their vocal cords were damaged. They couldn't even scream or cry. They could only make some hoarse howls of unknown meaning, mixed with a lot of the sound of air leakage. If you don't want to die, it's best not to make a sound. If you inhale too much air, you may develop emphysema, Kaylan told them. It's just that this group of people can no longer hear what Kaylan is saying. The fear of imminent death has deeply grasped their hearts. Even the most devout believers of heretics feel life passing from their bodies little by little. It is impossible to be completely unafraid. Survival is the instinct of all living things, especially the slow death process, which is an unbearable torment and torture compared to instantaneous death. There is no way. Qingzhao, Valentina, do me a favor. Kaylan turned to the two women and said, first search these people for any hidden weapons, and then treat their wounds. At least a few survivors must be left alive for interrogation. At this time, the soldiers of the garrison finally separated from the crowd and rushed over quickly. About 50 meters away from the scene, they had already raised their guns and pointed them at Kaylan and others. What's going on? Who fired the gun? A captain walked out from behind the soldier, but after he saw clearly who was holding the gun, the expression on his face suddenly became very wonderful. When Kaylan was sent here before, he had an acquaintance with the captain in charge of this temporary shelter. The captain also asked Kaylan if he needed a quiet cubicle, but Kaylan refused. But he never imagined that this great god would cause him such a big trouble before his butt was even warmed up. He wasn't sure whether the people above would hold this person accountable, but he was just a lieutenant in a small garrison, and he would definitely not be able to get away with such a thing. Just when the lieutenant had the consciousness to risk his life and take the blame, he heard this sentence. These people are spies infiltrated by heretical sections. They are planning a riot. I will help you deal with it. What? The lieutenant almost thought he heard wrongly. The group of relic hunters lying on the ground are members of a heretical sect. Mr. Kaylan, what is going on? The lieutenant quickly thought about it in his mind. If things are really as Kaylan said, then although he has also committed certain dereliction of duty, as long as he can handle it in the follow-up, then for him, the reward will definitely far exceed the punishment. They are trying to spread rumors that the Ark has been invaded, and incite the people to attack the blockade. Kaylan paused. Besides, this group of people still has, some troublesome things. Troublesome thing? The lieutenant's eyelids suddenly twitched. You are referring to, could it be the corrosive seed? But our army is not equipped with active ammunition. It's not a seed of erosion, but for you, it is probably more difficult than a seed of erosion. Kaylan shook his head, but you just need to remember one thing, don't let them talk. Even if you are interrogated, you can still pass. It will be conducted in a paper and pencil question and answer format. Can't they talk? The lieutenant was stunned for a moment, then nodded very seriously. Okay, I remember it. Do you have any medical soldiers under your command? Come and save them quickly. These people can't last long, Kaylan said to the lieutenant. By the way, it's best to give these people a comprehensive examination, although there should be no such thing among these people. Containers of erosion seeds, but who knows if there are some other weird things parasitic in their bodies. Yes, the lieutenant responded. At this time, he almost treated Kaylan as his direct superior. He turned to look behind him and shouted, "Medical team! People from the medical team, hurry up and bring your things. In addition, notify the Security Bureau and other temporary shelters so that they can increase their attention to prevent similar incidents from happening. If possible, it is best to send more manpower, and active ammunition and other things must also be equipped. Go. If this group of people is allowed to succeed, there will be a large number of casualties. That's your reminder. I will contact other shelters right now and submit a request for assistance to the Security Bureau. By the way, Mr. Kaylan, how should I report this matter? Just report it truthfully. After saying that, Kaylan glanced at the member of the heretic sect who was kicked away by Valentina. Although this guy looked the worst, in fact, his injuries were the lightest, only it was just half of the face that exploded, and the spine was misaligned. Considering the physique of a first-level enhanced person, this injury is not considered fatal. While the medical soldiers of the garrison were hurriedly treating the injured, several people wearing the same dark gray combat uniforms of the Security Bureau quickly walked into the temporary shelter. Huh? Is it the support from the Security Bureau? Coming so soon, the lieutenant was stunned for a moment, but the message that I requested reinforcements has not been sent out yet. You came to see me. Kaylan patted the lieutenant's shoulder and took the initiative to greet him. Mr. Kaylan, it's not convenient to talk here, please follow me. The first man, about 30 years old, immediately locked his eyes on Kaylan and said. Okay, Kaylan responded, then turned back to 33 and the two women, you just stay here. This matter is probably more difficult and you can't participate in it. The man nodded, and then took Kaylan into the manager's office of the mall. After the two of them entered, several other people immediately closed the door and guarded the door without leaving. I have heard what those soldiers said about what just happened in the shelter. The man said, your handling was very timely and correct. If the black-robed bishop were to initiate the sacrificial ceremony in the shelter, the consequences would be disastrous. How did you know there was a black-robed bishop among these people? I never told those soldiers, Kaylan asked. As far as I know, the only thing that can be countered by silence is this kind of thing, the man replied. His word was such things, not such people. Okay, now can you tell me the reason for the blockade of the whole ship? Is it related to the heretical sect? It has nothing to do with it. Aren't you from the Security Bureau? Kaylan looked at the person in front of him carefully. This is my ID. The man took out a hard card. In the upper left corner of the hard card, the badge and acronym of the Core Research Institute were printed, but the secondary unit in the next line was not a research department or an independent research group, but a department name that Kaylan had never heard of. Crisis Management Section. Crisis Management Department? I've never heard of this department, he asked directly. Normally, we almost never appear in the public eye. The man pointed to his uniform. Even when necessary, we will disguise ourselves as members of the Security Bureau to avoid causing panic. Causing panic? People don't know the existence of a department like yours. How could it cause panic? Kaylan couldn't help but ask. Because any of the things we need to deal with are enough to cause large-scale panic, the man replied. In fact, we are not affiliated with the Core Research Institute, but are directly dispatched by the Immortal Crew Association. Kaylan took another look at the hard card. The man in front of him, who was only in his early 30s, was called Lin Kaiming, and his position was the Deputy Section Chief of the Crisis Management Department. Generally speaking, the second in command in such an important department can be considered young at the age of 40. However, if the man in front of him, who is not much older than himself, can sit in this position, it can only mean two things. First, this guy named Lin Kaiming is so powerful that he can surpass the limitations of seniority. Second, those members of the crisis management section who were older than him were either dead or forced to retire. I always feel that you are emphasizing the seriousness of this incident. Just say it directly, I am mentally prepared. Lin Kaiming took out a tablet and handed it to Kaylan. Playing on the screen was a processed video, from Professor Smith's laboratory to what happened in the corridor. It's just that there are many places in the video that are covered with thick mosaics, not the kind of blurry mosaic that reduces pixels and degrades color details, but a whole black block of color that completely blocks the things behind the mosaic. Strictly true. It turns out that the people at the institute were trying to kill themselves and came up with something terrible. It seems that this is an acute infectious disease, but I can't see the specific symptoms and transmission route from the video. Come out. What I don't understand is why this video is mosaic. Can't even you get the original high definition and uncensored surveillance video? Because if there is no mosaic, the thing will spread, Lin Kaiming said seriously. No mosaic? Will that thing spread immediately? What do you mean? Ian's face changed slightly, and these words instantly made him realize the seriousness of the problem. The mosaic part is actually a structure similar to the human eyeball, Lin Kaiming said. The surface of the infected person's body will quickly develop sarcoma-like growths, and after cracking, eyeball-like organs will be exposed. These rapidly proliferating eyeball-like the organs will quickly drain the body of energy, and the infected person will die from organ failure within 5 to 10 minutes. Eyeball. Based on the analysis of a large number of infection cases, we came to the conclusion that the way the symptom is transmitted is to look into these eyeballs. As long as our eyes look into these eyeballs, we will be infected. Eye-to-eye infection? I'm afraid it's not that simple. Lan took a breath and said with a wry smile, if that's all, there's no need to process the video. Yes, not only looking directly, even if you look into these eyeballs through media such as videos, photos, mirrors, etc., you will be infected. The specific reasons are still under study, Lin Kaiming said. Lan only felt a buzz in his head, and the hairs on his back stood up. It was not that he had never had similar conjectures, but this should only exist in fantasy and should never happen in reality. Middle. Damn, this makes me a little numb. You guys are so stupid in your research. This thing is obviously not something that our current scientific system can explain. This method of infection can no longer be described as a virus. It is more like a spiritual pollution. The mental pollution here refers to literal mental pollution. The infected person does not even need to interact with the source of infection. Formal contact only requires receiving specific information related to the source of infection to become infected. In this case, not only is the source of infection itself dangerous, but even a video, a photo, as long as that specific information is recorded on it, they are all part of the source of infection. Even in the technology left over from Alpha civilization, Lan had never heard of anything similar. This kind of thing seems to come from his power. This is our duty. Okay, now that the transmission method has been clarified, why don't we just send autonomous robots to clean up the contaminated areas? Lan said, don't let the background operators look at the robot's surveillance footage, just set the settings directly, establish the target parameters, and then hand them all over to the computer. These things can't even infect machines, right? They cannot infect machines, but machines cannot identify them, Lin Kaiming said. As early as the first time the transmission method was discovered, someone mentioned the solution of autonomous robots. We took huge risks to collect. We collected dozens of sets of eyeball pictures and let the AI learn on its own. The results of it? The first batch of autonomous robots released into contaminated areas killed all the humans they found and destroyed their eyes, but they turned a blind eye to the real infected people. I now understand why the entire ship has to be blocked. Lan nodded in agreement, but, is it useful for you to ask me about this? Could it be that you are planning to let me use the Yagonactor? Can the weapons on the ship directly evaporate the contaminated area? Then I can only tell you that I am sorry to tell you that all the weapons on the Yagonactor are in an unusable state, and I can't do that. No, that's not why we found you. Lin Kaiming shook his head. It's because Smith's experimental specimens were clone tissue taken from your blood cells. The experiment at the beginning of the video was where he used the corrosion seed. The cells were injected into your clone tissue. It is true that he has seriously violated the prohibition of the undead crew, but the matter has reached this point and we can no longer hold him accountable. For some reason, Lan suddenly wanted to curse. PS Thanks to book friend 2017021412063169 for the 500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter, author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 567. In addition, the entire experimental building is in a state that cannot be recognized by AI, so we can basically determine the whole building has been infected by that thing. Yes, Lin Kaiming nodded. So? What do you want me to do? Kailan asked. Since the other party did not further pursue the abnormality in his body, he would naturally not continue to dwell on the topic. Obviously, the undead crew would know some secrets related to him that he knew nothing about. Otherwise, the person who came to the door now should not be the deputy chief of the crisis management department, but a team of heavily armed elite agents. Although Kailan was very interested in these secrets, now was not the time to discuss this. He looked into the other person's eyes and said word by word, "I think that with my ability, I can't help you. Don't refuse in a hurry. Listen to me finish the matter first." Lin Kaiming said, "If it is not the laboratory building of the Institute that is contaminated, we can launch the entire block into low Earth orbit like the East 9th District. And then destroy it with artillery fire, but the section where the Institute is located involves too many things. It is no exaggeration to say that if we really do this, the level of human science and technology will be set back at least 30 years. OK, Lan said expressionlessly, "The one who violated the ban was Professor Smith, not me. What's the use of looking for me? Can I solve the problem?" "But Professor Smith is dead." Lin Kaiming did not have any dissatisfaction because of Ian's attitude, but explained very patiently, "According to the analysis of the Research Institute, you, as a source of infection in the biological sense mother, maybe you're the only one who won't be infected by it. Perhaps? Shouldn't scientific research advocate rigor? I am very confused about this group of experts and scholars who have the highest salary in ARC, squander a lot of research funds every minute, and can decide the life and death of ordinary people at will." "Maybe how did these two words come out of their mouths?" Kailan asked in a deep voice. "All those who neglect their duties will be held accountable afterwards." Lin Kaiming shook his head, "But now, you are our last hope." "The last hope? There are obviously many solutions. Why should you place your hope on me?" "Yes, theoretically speaking, there are indeed many safer, more appropriate solutions with a higher success rate, but we don't have time." "No time? Why?" Kailan was a little confused. "Now that the mode of infection has been clarified, as long as the infection route is cut off, the number of infected people will not expand. As for those who have been infected, they will die soon anyway. For organ failure, you don't even have to execute them yourself, you just need to destroy the bodies. I don't believe that the combined power of the Institute and the Security Bureau can't even handle this little thing. But the problem is that the laboratory building of the biomedical group was contaminated. In the underground ice house of this building, there are still more than 1,000 units of active cells of erosion seeds, as well as various types of cells from Alpha Star. Gene samples of indigenous creatures and biochemical weapons of Alpha civilization. If these things are swallowed by it, it is likely to undergo secondary mutation. By then, the source of infection may not be as simple as visual contact." Lin Kaiming paused and continued, "Experts from the Institute believe that it is still an imperfect and incomplete individual. If it can evolve into a perfect state, the way of transmission of it should not be sight, but should its cognition. Cognition. Yes, to put it simply, everyone who knows the existence of it will be infected, and no one will be spared. This also includes you, me, and even the members of the crew association. By then, the situation will be completely out of control. The moment you know that it exists, you are equivalent to being infected by it. Oh, this is the true meaning of spiritual pollution, that Professor Smith really created something incredible." Something Kailan couldn't help but reveal a helpless smile. Experts from the institute named it mimetic infection. The principle of this type of infection is currently unknown to us. The only way to fight it is to eliminate the source of it, Lin Keiming said. Does the origin of it refer to the lump of flesh that was injected with the cells of the seed of erosion? That's what it looked like 3 hours ago. As for what it looks like now, no one knows. Besides mimetic infection, does this thing have other threats? For example, high temperature, corrosiveness, toxicity, radiation, etc. Is it proactively aggressive? Kaylan asked. Sorry, we don't know anything about this. Lin Keiming shook his head. We are trying to modify the AI logic of the autonomous robot to make it enter the biological laboratory building along a pre-established patrol route in order to obtain more and relevant intelligence, but the signals of all robots that entered the experimental building have disappeared, so it can be basically concluded that they have been destroyed. However, peripherally infected people do not show aggression. Although the eye-like organs generated on the surface of the infected person will search for nearby infectious targets, they will not drive the host's body to perform any activities. There are a large number of examples that show that infected people are conscious before death and do not lose control of their bodies. They can even gain extra vision with the help of these eye-like organs, Lin Keiming said, referring to peripherally infected people. Should be people outside the contaminated area who were infected because they accidentally looked directly into the eyes in the video or picture. There were definitely not a few people like this in the early days of the accident. This kind of infection method was impossible to guard against, and even the top managers of ARC were not spared. Kaylan was suddenly curious whether anyone among the undead crew members had been succumbed. But the origin should be completely different from these secondary infected people, right? Otherwise, you can solve the problem just by relying on autonomous robots, Kaylan said. If that thing has a mutation that is not weaker than Type B, if I have enough combat power, I might enter the experimental building alone and deliver food to the other party, right? The actual combat power of the opponent is unknown for the time being, but it can be initially determined that it has a certain degree of self-awareness and has a very low probability of being intelligent. Just tell me to go and die, Kaylan couldn't help but complain. We will provide you with the most complete logistical support and technical support, Lin Keiming said. These are all minor. The key question is, how can you be sure that I will not be infected by it? Is it because it comes from my clone cells? This is the conclusion reached by experts after research. But wasn't this accident also caused by the experts? Kaylan interrupted. Let me ask, is this the request of the Immortal Crew Association? Yes, Lin Keiming answered bluntly, the crew will assign you to handle the accident. The researchers, the Safety Bureau and the Crisis Management Department will fully assist. From the time you take over this task, you will receive temporary support from these 3 departments. Supreme Command Authority. Then I let you die now, okay? Okay. Lin Keiming took out the pistol without hesitation, put it against his temple, and turned on the safety. Seeing that this guy was about to pull the trigger, Kaylan directly picked up the electronic calendar on the table and smashed it. Bang! The gun fired, but after being hit by Kaylan, the bullet did not penetrate his head, but hit his thigh, and blood gushed out. It's just that Lin Keiming seemed to feel no pain, and the expression on his face hardly changed. Kaylan even wondered whether this guy had undergone some special surgery to block pain nerves. Okay, I believe it, just stop the bleeding first. I have something else to ask you. I don't want you to go into shock due to excessive blood loss, Kaylan said. Lin Keiming didn't speak, silently tore open his trousers, inserted 2 fingers into the bloody wound, and clamped the lead bullet hard. The soft lead core bullet has been severely deformed. It is estimated that it hit the hard leg bone after being shot into the leg. The strength of human bones enhanced by level 3 or above is almost the same as steel. He is a ruthless person, Kaylan commented when he saw the other party throwing the deformed warhead into the trash can beside the table without saying a word. The other party did not carry any medical equipment, so Kaylan simply took out the small first aid kit he carried with him and threw it on the table. "Thank you." Lin Kaiming looked up at Kaylan and opened the first aid kit. His technique was very skillful. It only took less than 10 minutes in total for debridement, disinfection, suturing, and bandaging. Fortunately, the shot did not hit any major arteries. Apart from dyeing the dark gray combat pants black and red, the amount of bleeding was still within a controllable range. Looking at Lin Kaiming's slightly pale face, Kaylan asked, "How can I be sure that I will not be infected by that thing?" "There is an encrypted folder on the desktop of the tablet, which contains unmosaic photos. The password is 202112224. Lin Kaiming replied. "Ha, this method is really simple and crude." Kaylan clicked on the folder and then entered the password. Just when the last digit of the password was left, his fingers stopped. He looked at Lin Kaiming and asked, "Why are you still here? If I am also infected, if you stare at me like this, you will be the next one to suffer. If an accident really happens, there must be a detailed report from witnesses, so I will not avoid it." Lin Kaiming replied, "If an accident really happens, after I submit the report, my deputy will take over. My duty is to clean up the scene." "Yes, after all, you are not even afraid of death." Kaylan nodded, "But, by cleaning up the scene, do you mean destroying both of our bodies?" "It only includes me." Lin Kaiming shook his head. "According to the requirements of the Crew Association, if you are infected, we need to send you to the designated place as soon as possible at all costs." "The designated place? Where is it?" "I don't know. We won't be told the details of this mission until that happens. It's likely that they want to treat me as a precious experimental specimen." Kaylan smiled nonchalantly and entered the last digit of the password. Lin Kaiming did not answer, but looked at Kaylan seriously. "I'm going to open the picture file. If you want to change your mind now, it's still late." Kaylan finally reminded. Lin Kaiming shook his head. "If you regret it now, it's too late." Kaylan clicked on the picture. It was a face, vaguely identifiable as the face of a young woman, but apart from her original facial features, this face was completely occupied by densely packed eyes. Those raised tumor-like the growths covered the skin in layers, and almost half of them had burst open, revealing the eyeballs wrapped under the skin. Just seeing this scene is enough to make people feel creepy. No wonder the researchers in the previous video were so frightened. What's more, they didn't even know how the woman was infected at that time. However, when Kaylan felt a little strange, he always felt that these eyeballs seemed to be moving. They were chasing the focus of his sight. No matter which corner of the face he looked at, these eyeballs were in contact with him, staring at each other. Kaylan took a look at the suffix name of the picture file. It was .jpg instead of .gif. This was indeed a stop-motion picture rather than a dynamic picture. But those eyeballs of different sizes are really moving. However, after considering the incredible way of infection of this thing, Kaylan didn't bother to ask Lin Kaiming. The information attached to this photo is equivalent to a virus, and the photo file itself has become a dangerous source of infection. If the mimetic contagion predicted by those unreliable experts really occurs, then not only photos, any carrier carrying information related to it will become the means and channels for it to spread. Cognition is infection, which is probably the essence of mimetic infection, and the only way to remove the threat from cognition may be high-intensity physical brainwashing, which will be related to memetics. All memories and cognitions of the infected person are erased from the mind of the infected person, or the person is simply transformed into a mental patient whose perception of the outside world is different from that of ordinary people. In this way, the risk of mimetic infection may be avoided. It's just that after such a round of tossing, this person is basically useless. "It's been 5 minutes," Lin Kaiming said. Even his tone was inevitably more nervous. "Do you feel any discomfort? Such as itchy skin, joint pain, or respiratory distress? P.S. Thanks to book friend 20211201152729343 for the 100 starting coins. PPS I wish everyone a happy Christmas Eve, I don't have to fight anymore. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 568. No, Kaylan shook his head. I didn't feel any discomfort. It seems that the expert's guess is correct, as the mother of the clone tissue, you will not be infected. Lin Kaiming's face showed a trace of obvious excitement. What about you? Do you feel any discomfort? Itchy skin, joint pain or respiratory distress? What Lin Kaiming didn't expect was that Kaylan actually asked this question to himself. He felt a little strange. I didn't see the picture of the unprocessed source of infection. No, you saw it? Kaylan closed the dangerous picture file, pointed at his eyes with the index and middle fingers of his right hand, and retorted, you said before, not only the video and picture files, but also the image in the mirror have it's contagious. So you've just been staring at me and observing my reaction, and there will inevitably be a reflection of the picture on the screen in my eyes. Lin Kaiming, this. Although this reflection is difficult to see clearly without looking carefully, it does exist, Kaylan continued, but you are just like me, you are not infected. This, I just, didn't notice it at all. Kaylan sighed, perhaps, its current mode of infection is almost the same as what the experts call mimetic infection, except that its meme is incomplete and dissemination must be completed when certain conditions are met. It's because I didn't see them subjectively, so I wasn't infected. That's what you mean, right? As expected of the Deputy Chief of the Crisis Management Department, Lin Kaiming reacted immediately. Yes. When you are not aware of it, or your brain thinks that you have not seen those things, the specific conditions of mimetic infection cannot be achieved. Even if you have actually seen those eyeballs, you nor will it be infected, Kaylan said. This is probably a paradox at the cognitive level, but it is a bit like idealism in philosophical theory, that is, spirit determines matter, what you see, what you recognize, is what really exists, Kaylan said. Then if someone can temporarily change his perception of the world through his strong willpower, wouldn't he be immune to infection? Theoretically, as long as you can deceive yourself, for example, you see those eyeballs, but you can tell your brain, I didn't see anything, and firmly believe it, you can to literally turn a blind eye and turn a deaf ear, then this person can completely ignore the mimetic contagion. Kaylan paused, but this is difficult to do, and the judgment of cognitive boundaries is extremely blurry, at least in the mind. If you relax a little bit, you will. But this is still a very pioneering idea. Can you please send the content of our conversation to the experts at the Institute? I think this should be of great help in solving the incident. Whatever you want. Kaylan waved his hand. Anyone with a little more imagination can think of this kind of thing. Those experts probably fell into the trap of inherent ideas, but the problem is, this thing, it cannot be explained by any existing theory or law of mankind. Indeed, Lin Kaiming nodded in agreement. At this time, he was already somewhat convinced of Ian's special temporary boss. We initially tried letting people drive mechas into contaminated areas, and automatically the eyeballs appearing in the surveillance cameras are shielded, but because the AI cannot recognize them, they cannot be coded immediately. None of the first 2 batches of pilots who entered the contaminated area were immune to infection. Some people have proposed manual identification by rear personnel, but manual identification will firstly be delayed by several seconds, and secondly, there may be omissions. Also, the price to be paid is too great, and the person responsible for the identification is like a waste. Just like any other product, a human life can only buy a mecha a few minutes at most. The countermeasures team thought of several plans, such as deliberately rendering the image with blur, but the image after special processing is still contagious. The only way is to directly block it with color blocks or other layers, just like you just did, as the saying goes, out of sight, out of sight. As for the thermal infrared detection mode, it is completely useless. The temperature of those things is exactly the same as the environment, and they are invisible in the infrared field of view. I don't know since when, Lin Keiming's address to K-Lan has changed from you to you. It's all hypothetical anyway, so why not be more bold? K-Lan stood up. Have you ever thought that these eyeballs may not exist in the real world at all? Maybe, they only exist in our cognition? Otherwise, why wouldn't AI be able to recognize them? Huh, Lin Keiming was suddenly startled, and his whole body couldn't help but tremble. Since things are so outrageous, we might as well get over it. K-Lan shrugged. Of course, hypotheticals are hypotheticals. This thing is definitely not that simple. At least, it has the ability to interfere with reality and is not completely virtual. A meme is a piece of information, but the thing that carries the information must be something in the real world, but whether it is the shape of an eyeball or not, that's hard to say. I have sent these proposals to the frontline countermeasures team. The experts in the countermeasures team are having a heated discussion about this. The tablet in your hand also has permission to access the countermeasures team. You can use it to listen in or directly get involved, Lin Keiming said. It's okay to participate. I still know how much I weigh. I'm just providing them with a possibility. K-Lan shook his head. Since you said time is tight, let's set off quickly. Those experts are right about at least one thing: memes can change at any time, and no one knows what they will become in the end. The high-speed special train is on standby at the nearest station. It only takes us 15 minutes to reach the blockade outside the contaminated area, Lin Keiming said immediately. Well, one more thing, you guys can help me find someone. Who? Hunting God Hunting Group, Asano Akira. I need him as my assistant, K-Lan said. This mission is simply tailor-made for him. As K-Lan said, if the vector of the meme is vision, then a blind person is tantamount to a natural immune person. Coupled with Asano Akira's unreasonable force value, even if the meme's body really has the strength of the B-type mutant, he can easily kill it alone. The high-speed train, in Lin Keiming's words, is not so much a train as a space shuttle lying horizontally on a maglev track. At the rear of the train, 4 rocket thrusters with a nozzle diameter of nearly 2 meters were even installed. K-Lan could even imagine the terrifying pushing feeling when this train started. For the sake of safety, please put on this. Lin Keiming handed over a box, which contained a set of heavy composite anti-gravity suits. After K-Lan put on the clothes, a staff member of the Crisis Management Department, a tube was immediately inserted into the interface of the anti-gravity suit, and a semi-solid fluid similar to gel quickly filled the middle layer of the suit. K-Lan felt as if he was trapped in an oversized jelly. Even his head was wrapped tightly. The separation wall between the various blocks has been lowered, but there is still an opening in the separation wall for the train to pass through. Of course, the only train that can pass through this place is the one that K-Lan took. All public transportation within the Ark has been suspended, so no matter how fast this train equipped with rocket thrusters drives, there is no need to worry about running into other trains. The entire length of the maglev track in the Ark reaches tens of thousands of kilometers. The internet is the only train that is still running. What made K-Lan speechless the most was, when this train started, it even shouted 3, 2, 1, ignition, and then, a push on the back that was strong enough to cause a brief fainting was exerted. When it came to his body, although the gel filled in the anti-gravity suit had buffered most of the G-force, K-Lan was still oppressed by this force and was speechless. The surrounding streets were receding rapidly, and the scenery outside the portholes quickly became a long blur. Everyone in the carriage clung to the backs of their seats, holding tightly to the armrests of their seats with both hands. It wasn't until the train stopped accelerating that the pressure slowed down slightly. K-Lan glanced at Lin Keiming beside him. His condition was obviously not much better than his own. Of course, it could also be due to excessive blood loss from the gunshot wound just now. The wound didn't open, right? K-Lan asked. It's okay, Lin Keiming shook his head. Me too, I just tried this kind of transportation for the first time today. This is actually not a train. You see, This thing was modified using a space shuttle, right? Kaylan pointed to an emblem on the back of the front seat. Even the logo of the second cruise fleet is still there. Yes, Lin Kaiming nodded. This is an in-ship high-speed transportation equipment designed for emergency use, but this one is still just a concept machine. This plan was just proposed 4 months ago. That is to say, this thing is still a semi-finished product. Kaylan was stunned for a moment. Is the safety guaranteed? Although there is no need to worry about a car crash, if it derails, no one on this car can survive, right? Ordinary space shuttles will be equipped with an ejection escape device. If the space shuttle crashes, with the help of this device, the crew members have at least a 70% survival rate, but the problem is that they are now inside the Ark. Except for some special areas, most of them will not survive. In some areas, the height of a single floor will not exceed 150 meters. In some places where the space is relatively tight, there are even single-digit floor heights. If you eject in such a place, you may not even be able to open the parachute. Hit the dome directly. Safety should be guaranteed. As he spoke, Lin Kaiming's face became even paler. Kaylan noticed that the dark red liquid was dripping down his trousers, and a pool of it had accumulated under his seat. A small pool of blood. You still said your wound is fine, Kaylan frowned. How about we stop the train and treat the wound? It's okay, don't waste precious time for me, Lin Kaiming said intermittently, and, once you stop, you have to refill the fuel if you want to start it again. You and the guys from the security bureau are the same as each other, Kaylan sighed helplessly. Always put your mission first, and never take your own life seriously. I am a level 4 enhanced person. This injury is really not a big deal. Lin Kaiming said. He took off his anti-gravity suit and stuck a syringe under his shoulder. Kaylan thought it was a coagulant at first, but if it was a coagulant, the injection location should be 1 inch closer to the wound to the torso. It wasn't until Lin Kaiming finished injecting the medicine and pulled out the syringe that Kaylan discovered it turned out to be a military stimulant. He is really a guy who doesn't care about his life, Kaylan shook his head. After being injected with the stimulant, Lin Kaiming's condition instantly improved a lot, and his speech was no longer choppy. It will be here soon. I just received news that your companions have arrived at the frontline headquarters where the countermeasures team is located. Them. In addition to Asano Akira, who you named, other members of the Hunting God hunting group also came here, Lin Kaiming replied. I have informed the crew meeting in advance and received permission. Isn't this adding trouble? They are not blind, why are they coming here to cause trouble? Isn't it troublesome enough? Although he was a little moved in his heart, Kaylan couldn't help but cursed. Tell your people to get rid of these guys, keep an eye on them, we must not let them enter the contaminated area. Understood, Lin Kaiming nodded. At first I planned to reject their request, but they said they would not let Asano Akira go unless they agreed, and even threatened to use violence to rob people. The team responsible for finding people, almost a conflict broke out with them, and I had to compromise. You know what I'm doing. If you really start a fight with those bastards, I'll give up now, Kaylan said. I know that those people are very important companions to you, so I have repeatedly emphasized this point with the people in that group, Lin Kaiming said. Just as he finished speaking, the train finally began to slow down. P.S. Thanks for the 500 starting coins for one-shot reloading. P.P.S. In addition, this month's double monthly ticket event will start at midnight on December 29th. Everyone who has a monthly ticket in hand should save it for a while and vote again when the event starts. Although I feel it is a bit difficult to reach 1,000 monthly tickets this month, but if a person does not have a dream, what is the difference between a person and a salted fish? It's the end of the year, and Kidian's monthly ticket S4 season is also coming to an end. I hope you can help me one last time. Thank you very much. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 569. Perhaps because they were worried that the emergency braking would cause the train to fly off the track, the entire deceleration process lasted for nearly 5 minutes. With the buffering of several small reverse thrusters installed on the front of the train, the entire train successfully stopped. This is the West District 1, which is the top district in the entire arc after the core district. However, there are no commercial areas or residential areas in this district. Even the noble manors and residential areas that are common in the other 3 first districts, there are no mansions. The entire West First District is an industry of the NOAA Core Research Institute. The Research Institute headquarters alone occupies 1/3 of the entire area, and the remaining area is also occupied by various branches, staff dormitories, and the institutions of higher learning affiliated with the institute are full to the brim. It is no exaggeration to say that if you pick a random person on the streets of West District 1, 10 out of 10 will be related to the institute. If outsiders want to enter West District 1, they even need to apply for a limited time pass. After all, this area covers less than 1% of the entire arc, but it concentrates more than 90% of the arc's cutting-edge talents and technologies. This is why the undead crew can't handle the West District like they did in the East 9th District. One of the reasons why District 1 was destroyed. At this time, this block, which is usually full of scientific research and academic atmosphere, has completely turned into a military restricted area. A large number of armored vehicles and mechas directly formed a steel wall, dividing the West First District into 3 floors and 3 floors outside. The ground was surrounded. As for the researchers' headquarters near the core area, a large energy shield was directly activated. The brilliant iridescent light curtain turned a large white building upside down like a giant bowl. This light curtain, although it is extremely beautiful, anyone or anything that touches it will be instantly reduced to ashes. Even if a tank is smashed into it, the thick alloy armor will be melted into hot molten steel. Judging from the degree of solidification of the light curtain, the power of this energy shield has obviously been fully charged. It has to be said that the wealthy research institute is really well off. The crystal consumption of this shield per minute is enough to withstand it is equivalent to a day's consumption of a cruise fleet in a non-combat state. Originally, Kaylan wanted to convert it into credits to calculate how much this big bowl would cost per hour, but when the number of zeros in the calculation result exceeded 2 digits, he gave up decisively. Calculate this is meaningless. In order to prevent the things inside from escaping out, the institute should be willing to risk all its wealth. It's just that memes cannot be trapped no matter how strong the energy shield is. The train stops at the college station in West District 1, which is the outermost of the 3 defense lines. A little further in is the Core Research Institute affiliated Polytechnic, the dream school of countless students. It's just that now this ARC number 1 Polytechnic looks more like a military school. As far as the eye can see, there are garrison soldiers in military uniforms and emergency fire powerpoints everywhere. Looking up, large caliber heavy machine guns are set up on the high points of almost all buildings. Behind some half-open windows, you can vaguely see the figure of the sniper. Is it useful? Kaylan couldn't help but complain in a low voice. The defense here seemed impeccable, but in fact, when these soldiers saw the information carrier carrying the meme from the scope, the defense line has collapsed. As the saying goes widely among relic hunters, violence and weapons can solve many problems, but most problems cannot be solved by them. Seeing that Kaylan and others got off the train, the soldiers even omitted the step of coming up to check their identities and directly gave way to the passage. Several people wearing powered exoskeletons hurried back to take them out. The barricades across the street were removed. A group of people wearing the same dark gray uniforms as Lin Kaiming and others came out. Kaylan already knew that those with copper-colored decorative buttons on their cuffs were serious security bureau agents, and the people in the crisis management department, despite their uniforms, they are exactly the same as the security bureau, but the decorative buttons on their cuffs are chrome-plated. In the absence of any identification, this was the only way to identify the two groups. The group of people in front of them are all members of the crisis management section. On the contrary, The agents of the Security Bureau stood at their posts nearby with serious faces, not daring to move a step. In terms of authority and level, the Crisis Management Section should be above the Security Bureau. After all, they directly take orders from the Undead Crew Association, and there is a joint parliamentary group between the Security Bureau and the Crew Association. This is the chief of the Crisis Management Department. Schroeder, seeing Kaylan focus on the person in the front, Lin Keiming took the initiative to introduce him. Although Schroeder obviously has a Western name, this man's appearance is that of an authentic Asian, and he is also the kind of Asian with very pure blood. Kaylan can't even find it on his square face. Characteristics that are common in people of mixed race. Compared to Lin Keiming, the second in command, the head of the Crisis Management Department is not a few years older. Although he looks more stable, Kaylan can guarantee that this guy is definitely not over 40. Unless he specifically undergoes cosmetic surgery that can make him look younger. The two groups of people came together. The somewhat too young chief of the Crisis Management Department seemed to have read the doubt in Ian's eyes, and took the initiative to say, "I know you must be doubting my age. I'll tell you the truth. Today is my first day sitting in the position of section chief. Well, to be precise, it's the 4th hour." He glanced at Lin Keiming, who was following Kaylan, and then said, "Keiming is the same as me. We were originally the captain and deputy captain of the first mobile team. To be honest, we never expected to be promoted in this way. This method. Taking orders in the face of danger? So, the original deputy section chief." A look of surprise flashed across Ian's face. Yes, they all looked directly at the unprocessed pictures. Not only them, but the entire leadership of the Crisis Management Department was not spared. Schroeder said with a slight regret on his face, "If possible, I would rather give up such a promotion opportunity. I think I am still more suitable for charging into battle." "Oh, I'm sorry." Ian's heart trembled. Sure enough, his previous guess was right. The reason why the two of them were able to sit in this position was entirely because Corey was more capable and more qualified than them in the entire crisis management process. The old people have all been sacrificed. No wonder Lin Keiming, a stupid young man, pulled the trigger on his head without even a moment's hesitation. Logically speaking, people with this kind of leadership, even if they have to sacrifice themselves, will definitely weigh the pros and cons before dying and try their best to maximize the value of their lives. Rather than like him, Kaylan put the muzzle of the gun to his temple with a casual word. From the first moment they met, Lin Keiming gave Kaylan the impression that he was like a heroic general charging into battle, rather than a marshal or staff officer sitting in charge of the Central Army. This guy was just the vice captain of a mobile team 4 hours ago. Kaylan suddenly felt a little depressed. The leadership of the Crisis Management Department was completely wiped out in the early stages of the incident, leaving only these two stupid young people to lead the team. For him, this news was simply terrible. He needs to be the kind of ally who has experience and a keen sense of smell. Schroeder and Lin Keiming in front of him may be good as chess pieces to rush on the chessboard, but if they are to be the chess players to control the overall situation, Kaylan always felt that it was not very reliable. But because of the meme, the chess piece that goes into battle can only be himself. This group of people can't help at all. Kaylan glanced at the messages on his tablet and discovered that the previous chief of the Crisis Management Department, who died of mimetic infection not long ago, was also named Schroeder. Schroeder was not the same name, but a code name. Every chief of the Crisis Management Department is Schroeder. "Is there any progress on the countermeasures team?" Kaylan asked. Several experts hold different opinions, and the debate is fierce, but the specific progress. Schroeder sighed and shook his head slightly. "Forget it, I didn't count on them at the beginning." Kaylan said, "This group of people is top-notch just for causing trouble and causing death. The only thing he can rely on now is the assistance from the Undead Crew Association, but he also knows that if the Undead Crew Association can provide any useful information, they will definitely contact him." If they didn't come to find him, then even if he went to ask them, he wouldn't be able to find out anything. However, the equipment department has temporarily produced 2 sets of armor for you and your assistants. One is a general-purpose type, and the other is a customized melee-specific type based on the specialty of the hunter named Asano Akira, and is equipped with a small sonar and a special enhancement device that can amplify the power of thoughts, Schroeder said. A special strengthening device that can amplify the power of thoughts. Kaylan chewed the term again. It seems that you have collected a lot of information about us, and you even know this. These have all been approved by the Immortal Crew Association, Schroeder said. But you can rest assured that Mr. Akira Asano has been removed from that experimental project, and no one will bother him again in the future. I want to know if this mind power amplification device will have any side effects. Kaylan looked directly at Schroeder and asked, I know the price of that ability, and I also witnessed Marshall's final outcome with my own eyes. Don't try to blind me with lies. Hearing what Kaylan said, Schroeder was slightly startled, then nodded. There will definitely be side effects. Using that kind of ability will cause irreversible damage to the experimental subject itself, but as long as it is set properly, the power and side effects can be completely controlled within acceptable limits. That is to say, if this thing is turned on to its maximum power, it can kill Asano Akira, right? Schroeder didn't speak. He was silent for a few seconds before nodding his head. Tear it down. But, as long as you don't overuse it, there won't be any problems. With this device, at least you can have one more trump card in critical moments. Mr. Kaylan, please think about it carefully. If you really encounter a desperate situation, at least one can be sacrificed to preserve another. Tear it down. Kaylan looked at him coldly. I don't want to say it a third time. Do you think I still need Akira Asano to sacrifice his life for mine? Besides, if the matter is really serious, at that point, with all due respect, if the undead crew can't come up with a better solution, then everyone will just wait to die together. It's just a matter of order. Kaylan shrugged indifferently. Tell the people in the equipment department to remove the mind enhancement module. Schroeder looked at Kaylan with a hesitant expression. He took a few breaths, then turned his head and faced a man. The subordinate said. Where are they now? Where are they? Kaylan put the tablet in his pocket and walked forward. They're waiting on the second line of defense, Schroeder replied. The members of the Hunting God hunting group had previously discussed business with the family group in the East 2nd District, so even though Kaylan took this special train that was modified from a space shuttle, he still arrived at the scene one step later than them. When Kaylan and others arrived at the second line of defense, Hound and others were already waiting behind the roadblock. The moment they saw Kaylan, Hound had already climbed over the roadblock and ran over, grabbing Kaylan. Lan said, "Come with me, I have something to tell you." As for the people in the crisis management department, they were directly blocked by the two big guys Leighton and Zwilligitu. It would be a great honor for them to obey the arrangements of the crisis management department and wait here. As for this time, if you want them to get out of the way, that's something you can't even think about. Schroeder and Lin Keiming looked at each other and saw a wry smile on each other's faces. Although the strength of this group of ruin hunters was not very strong except for the guy named Asano Akira, but between K-Ians the reason is that they cannot conflict with these ruin hunters. There is nothing they can do against this group of people. On the other side, the Hound kept pulling Kaylan and dragged him into a toilet. He asked Asano Akira to guard outside and locked the door behind his back. "What's going on?" Hound asked nervously. "Why do they want you to perform this kind of mission? Are your secrets exposed?" "I don't know, but they didn't make things difficult for me, and they didn't even mention a word about my own abilities." Although the they in K-Ian's words referred to the undead crew, it sounded to the ears of the Hound. They became the group of people from the crisis management department. "Then how did they find you?" "I heard, what happened this time is very evil. Those things inside will be infected just by looking at them, damn it, This kind of thing is not something that humans can deal with, yes. According to me, just like how we dealt with the East 9th District, we should directly launch the entire West 2nd District into the sky, and then use the main cannon to completely destroy it. Actually, the cause of this incident has nothing to do with me, although it was a professor from the institute who caused the trouble. The thing in the contaminated area was created by him using my clone cells. Kaylan thought about it for a moment, or told the truth to the Hound. What did you say? The Hound's mouth suddenly opened wide. That thing inside, is your, clone cells. It is the product of the fusion of my clone cells and the active cells of the seed of erosion, Kaylan corrected. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 570. Are you telling the truth? The Hound had a look of disbelief on his face. It took him more than 10 breaths to digest the news. He took a step back and looked Kaylan up and down. Are you sure they didn't lie to you? Then why have we been with you for so long without any impact? Perhaps there was a secondary mutation after the fusion of my clone cells and the cells of the seed of erosion. Kaylan raised his hand and looked at his palm. There was a light white mark there, which he had previously interacted with the group of heretical sections when the members were fighting. His palm was accidentally cut by the rough metal zipper on the opponent's collar. But now, the scar is no longer visible at all. It only takes a few days for the pigment to settle in the new light-colored cortex, and the white mark will become exactly the same as the surrounding skin. To be honest, I'm not sure whether I'm still a human being in a biological sense. Why don't you count it? The Hound glared at him and shouted, do you have a few more arms or an extra eye than us? Why are you not a human being? Don't forget how you enlightened Yvonne before. Yes, how come it's your turn and you start thinking wildly? I'm not thinking wildly, but this matter really happened because of me. If I don't deal with it, if the thing inside mutates 3 or even 4 times, I'm afraid the entire ark will suffer, Kaylan said. Are you sure you won't be infected by that thing? The Hound asked. Kaylan nodded. But how can you guarantee that? The group of people outside are not taking advantage of you? Hound suddenly changed the topic. Don't look at them, and they haven't mentioned a word about the abnormality in you. That's because you are the only one who can solve this problem now. They need your help, so they are pretending like this. After you get rid of the thing inside, I'm afraid this group of people won't be so easy to talk to. I don't think so. Kaylan shook his head. The abnormality in his body had already appeared during Yagunactor, but the undead crew did not go into details. Instead, they issued a ban on him. An order to conduct an investigation, and this mimetic contamination incident was caused precisely because people at the Institute violated the prohibition and secretly conducted experiments related to themselves. Kaylan felt that the Immortal Crew Association might have foreseen such a result, so they issued such a ban. Unfortunately, they still underestimated the persistence of the lunatics in the Institute. Curiosity killed the cat never refers to the cat's own curiosity, but to the fact that humans kill cats out of their own curiosity and want to know, do cats really have 9 lives? Throw it away. And now, Kaylan feels like he is the unlucky cat. If it weren't for the suppression of the Immortal Crew Association, the madmen at the Institute would have used all available armed forces to go to Fleet Zero to arrest people. You don't think so? Hound repeated in a rhetorical tone. I know the faces of those people at the top of Ark better than you. As long as there are enough benefits, any promise is no different to them. It's just a common occurrence. What's more, they didn't make any promises to you, they just vaguely expressed an attitude. Even if this attitude changes 180 degrees by then, there will be nothing you can do. Reason. Seeing that Kaylan didn't seem to listen to his words, the Hound suddenly became angry. Kaylan, you should have seen the blockade outside now. You are not stupid. You should be very clear about what's inside. You can't stop it with guns and matches, so who do you think these things are prepared for? The cunning rabbit is dead, the lackey is cooked, the flying bird is gone, and the good bough is hidden. This is the proverb of you Chinese people, haven't you heard it? What's more, for them, whether it is value or threat, you must be in it. Do you know what's on top of that thing? Now if you want to go in, they will make way for you, but when you want to come out, do you think it will be so easy? I really hate the fact that iron cannot become steel, the hound said and smashed it on the door of the toilet cubicle nearby. Suddenly, a hole the size of a bowl appeared on the aging and brittle polymer door panel. That's not how the idiom hating iron cannot turn into steel is used. Kaylan started to speak, but was interrupted by the hound. There was a click and there was another hole in the door of the toilet cubicle. A crack more than half a meter long connected the two holes, and the entire door panel was already crumbling. I can use it however I want and you have no control over it. The problem now is that the group of people calling themselves the Crisis Management Department have already arranged the bags. Don't you know who this bag is intended to be used for? Are you going to get in there obediently? The hound jumped to his feet. Actually, if they wanted to arrest me, they would have arrested me long ago. Kaylan sighed, they know more than we imagined. Them. Who are they? The expression on Hound's face froze. He had already heard the implication in Ian's words. The them did not refer to the people from the Crisis Management Department outside, nor the researchers. The Academy and the Security Bureau, not even any class or organization he knew. An organization called the Undead Crew. Kaylan sighed, and finally said the name. They are the people in power hiding in the dark. The so-called highest decision-making organization, the United Parliamentary Group, is actually nothing more than it's just a puppet they pushed out into the open. The United Parliamentary Group are just puppets. Hound's movements froze. He always felt as if there was a thick lump of phlegm stuck in his throat. He couldn't spit it out or swallow it. It was so uncomfortable that it made people want to go crazy. This Undead Crew, who are they? Hound took a deep breath. Why do they hide in the dark? They. Kaylan recalled Pope Chiron's body like a mountain of meat, and couldn't help but paused. Maybe they are not human. Not a human. Hound was stunned for a moment, obviously not expecting Kaylan to give such an answer. It's not a human. What could it be? Computer AI. It can't be Alpha, right? A somewhat absurd smile appeared on the corner of the hound's mouth. This joke is not funny at all. Don't tell us that the ruler of mankind is actually they are a group of alpha people, haha, then I will just feel that I am not awake yet, and now I am dreaming, a dream that is extremely ridiculous. One thing that is certain is that they were once humans. As for what they are now, I can't tell clearly. They are probably things similar to me, Kaylan said. The hound stopped laughing, looked at him steadily, and asked, "A thing like you? I probably understand. This is just my guess. In fact, I have never seen the true face of the Undead Crew. Among the people I have come into contact with, all those who know their existence have never seen their true form with their own eyes. Including Schroeder and Lin Kaiming, and that Maginot who was transferred to Mukake. Maginot also knows about this Undead Crew member," Hound asked. He knew the crew existed, but not much. The hound suddenly let out a long sigh, shook his head to himself and said, "Damn, so that's what happened. No wonder Maginot took the initiative to contact you at that time. It turns out that this damn fat pig knew it from the beginning. Damn it, if I hadn't left the military, I should have access to this information by now." "Old dog," Kaylan shouted worriedly. "I'm fine, I just need a little time." Hound waved his hand towards Kaylan. He didn't care whether the floor in the toilet was dirty or not. He squatted down and gently kneaded the hanging hair on both sides of his forehead with both hands. "Skull point. Actually, I've always known that you were hiding something from us, but I knew there must be a reason why you didn't tell us. Now I see, this is it. I originally didn't plan to tell you about the existence of the immortal crew, they have too much energy. I can't guarantee whether they will take any extreme measures to keep their privacy. In their eyes, the life of ordinary people is just a number that can be used as a bargaining chip on the scale, Kaylan said while standing. I know. Hound nodded. You did the right thing, now I already know about it. Oh, and Asano Akira outside, he can definitely hear it. As for other people, don't tell them. He stood up from the ground, and for a moment, Kaylan felt as if he had aged more than 10 years. I just never thought that the fate of mankind would be decided by such a group of people, Hound said slowly. So, you should also join them in the future, right? They have already sent me an invitation. As long as I can pass the test, I can become a member of the Undead Crew Association, Kaylan said. The mission in the Molten Mine area is the assessment content of the first phase of this test. Kaylan, can you promise me something? Hound suddenly said. What's up? Even if you do become one of them in the future, don't forget that you are a human being, not a monster. The Hound paused and continued, the power of life and death can easily make people addicted. I don't know what you will become by then, and I also know the principle of kindness does not control soldiers, but in this situation after you become a chess player, don't forget the days when you were a chess piece. The Hound rubbed the muscles on his face vigorously and adjusted his mood. It may be too early to tell you this now. In fact, I have nothing to express, compared to the group of people in the United Parliamentary Group who are just waiting to die. I'd rather have someone more capable lead us, but you have to be careful. Those things, even if they treat you as the same kind, but the same kind and the companion have different meanings. His words were a little incoherent, but Kaylan still understood most of the meaning. I know. Kaylan nodded. We shouldn't be a burden to you, right? Hound asked with a smile. It doesn't count. That's fine. You can go in with confidence. If these little bastards from the Institute dare to have any bad ideas when you come out, I will be the first to kill them. Okay, but it seems that their old nest has been taken away. You just have a humming mouth, right? If you can't speak, don't speak in just a few seconds. The Hound returned to its usual state, as if the conversation just now had never happened. Same. Then I won't say anything. By the way, that person from the crew meeting, even if they have sent you an invitation, they may not be sincere, but you need to distinguish the specific situation yourself. We can't help you in this regard. Leave one more. My eyes are always right, and I never mind trying to speculate on others with the greatest malice, especially people like them who are in high positions and have an overview of the whole situation. They can see a lot of things that we can't see, just like me before. As they say, they are chess players, and we are chess pieces. The chess players can see the entire chess movement, but we can only see a few squares around us. Maybe in the next step, we will be treated as abandoned pieces. Give it away. Between the third line of defense and the Institute's headquarters, which is classified as a contaminated area, there is a blank area with a width of 300 meters. In order to prevent individuals infected by the meme from using buildings as cover to penetrate the defense line, the buildings in this circle were wiped out by some kind of amazingly powerful weapon. Standing on the edge of the blank area, Kaylan could only you can see the exposed foundation and metal materials that flowed like magma after being melted, and then solidified again. At the end of the blank area is the super energy shield like an inverted giant bowl. There are no personnel stationed on the third line of defense, and the entire line of defense adopts a fully automatic control system. As long as anything moving attempts to pass through the empty area, those densely packed turrets will immediately lock it until it was so blasted that not even a scrap was left. At the same time, in order to prevent the spread of information with memes, all communication lines in the entire West 2nd District were cut off, and only the internal wired network of the crisis management section could be used. The power armor worn by Kaylan and Asano Akira is equipped with 2 sets of communication devices. The wired communication device is connected to the command post at the end of the defense line through a 6-kilometer cable. If the cable is cut, the laser communication can also be used, of course, provided there are no obstructions in the path of the laser emission. The automatic firepower of the third defense line will be turned off in 15 seconds. You have a 5-minute window to cross the empty space in front. Are you ready? Schroeder's voice came from the earphones. Let me confirm for the last time, do I have the authority to fire at will? I will not be responsible if any priceless bottles and cans are broken by then, Kaylan said. Experts from the institute said they hope to minimize the damage, Schroeder said. After all, those are precious scientific research materials. Try my best, I can only say that I try my best. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi San. Chapter 571. Kaylan checked his equipment one last time, and it happened that the 15-second countdown on the head-up display also returned to 0 at this time, and was reset to a new countdown of 300 seconds. This was the window time reserved for them by the fire control system. He and Asano Akira had to cross the empty area before the 300-second countdown ended, otherwise they would be sieved by the dense heavy machine guns behind them, and then covered by several rounds of artillery fire, shattered bones and scattered ashes. Walk. Kaylan said to Asano Akira, striding forward. A distance of 300 meters, 5 minutes, to use a common joke on the internet, it is my grandma can push a wheelchair across it, but in fact, this road is not easy to walk. The roads left behind after the buildings in the neighborhood were violently demolished are uneven, with various potholes and exposed pipeline tunnels. If you are not careful, you will step on the air and fall into the compartment. Moreover, the support structures on the ground have been severely damaged in many places. These places seem to be intact on the surface, but in fact only the top 2 mm thick steel plate is still there, and the support frame and load-bearing platform below have been damaged. Due to the fracture and settlement, Ian's own weight plus the set of power armor, as well as the weapons and ammunition he carried with him, weighed more than 1 ton. What's more, the contact area of his feet is not large, and the pressure on the ground is even higher. There was no way such a thin steel plate could hold him up. Directly below the west area 1 is not a residential area, but one of the several core reactors that provide energy for the Ark. The various passages and pipelines inside are as complicated as a maze. If there is no guide robot, even if you may not be able to get out of it just by looking at the drawings. If you are unlucky enough and hit some important flammable and explosive facility, you can even save yourself the trouble of sending the body to the incinerator. When encountering a place like this, he and Asano Akira had no choice but to take a detour. It wasn't until the last 45 seconds left in the countdown that the two of them were able to touch the door of the Institute's headquarters. Kaylan took out an iron gray hard card with no patterns, words, or patterns on the surface and inserted it into the access control gate. Suddenly, a perfect circular hole about 5 meters in diameter appeared on the light screen in front of him. According to the researchers' level, their ID cards have different permissions. The lowest level is white, which can only pass through the gate of the institute and the access control of the department building to which it belongs under normal conditions, while the green card and blue card can go anywhere there are more cards than white ones. As for the purple cards held by professors, they can travel unimpeded throughout the entire institute headquarters except for a few confidential restricted areas. Of course, this means that under normal circumstances, if an emergency occurs, such as now, then whether it is a white card or a purple card, it will directly become a waste card, and only the red card and the red card of the institute's management will be replaced. Only the black cards held by the dean and vice-deans of the institute can retain their original permissions. The iron card in Ian's hand is held by the chief of the crisis management department. Its authority is equivalent to the black card of the director of the institute. But in addition, this card also has the ability to delete the black card and the special permissions of red card. Let's go. Kaylan patted Asano Akira's shoulder and stepped across the light curtain first. He found a communication interface stake at the entrance and plugged the communication cable he had just unplugged into the street stake. Because of the existence of the energy shield, neither wired communication nor laser communication could penetrate the shield and reach the outside. They must rely on communication interface piles and lines buried under the ground to maintain communication with the command headquarters in the rear, so preserving this interface pile has become the first task after entering the contaminated area. Kaylan pulled out 3 folding stands from the huge backpack, and mounted 3 automatic machine guns with the communication interface pile as the center. Except for Kaylan and Akira Asano with identifiers, anything that moved appeared here. All 3 machine guns would fire without hesitation within range. The bullet chain uses a 15-unit active ammunition inserted into every 3 conventional incendiary rounds. Therefore, even if the target of the attack is a corrosive seed, 1 round of long bursts is enough to deliver a fatal dose of active ammunition into the target's body. There are at least 400 individuals of erosion seeds in various stages sealed in the underground ice house at the Institute's headquarters, and there are at least 100 more containers frozen in ice coffins. They are all alive. Despite these erosions, it is unlikely that all the seeds and containers will escape, but no one can say what accidents will happen if the entire Institute headquarters loses control. Next time there is such an experiment, it should be done in the wilderness, Kaylan complained as he tightened the screws. This way, even if there is an accident, at least the situation will be easy to deal with. There won't be a next time. Schroeder's voice came from the earphones. Do you believe it? I don't believe it anyway. I dare say that many of those bastards in the countermeasures team are trying to figure me out now, right? I can guarantee that from now on, the Institute will strictly prohibit any projects related to you. Don't fart. The crew would have enforced this ban long ago. If they could abide by it, they wouldn't need me to come here to wipe their butts. You're right, Kaylan directly retorted Schroeder's words. After tightening the last screw, Kaylan tapped the bracket with a wrench, and there was a crisp sound. What's the sound? Is it a gunshot? Have you encountered the enemy? Schroeder immediately asked nervously. In order to prevent the meme from being transmitted to the command post behind the scenes, Kaylan and Akira Asano transmitted the communication back in real time through the cable. There are only 2 types of information, sound and coordinates. As for things like images, Kaylan needs to manually screen them and use processing software to mosaic out those parts with memes before they are sent back to the rear. I haven't encountered an enemy. I'm just checking whether the machine gun mount is secure, Kaylan said, turning on the sensor of the automatic machine gun. Several faint red lasers shot out from the muzzle of the gun, regularly in a fan-shaped pattern. Sweep back and forth within the range. To be honest, I don't think these 3 automatic machine guns can stop those monsters running out of the underground ice house. The original plan was to arrange a team of autonomous robots to follow you into the contaminated area, but the goals of the autonomous robots are too obvious, and they are more likely to be attacked by monsters. What you said, seems like 3 machine guns that are more than 1 meter long and rotating back and forth are not conspicuous. Kaylan complained casually and started to walk forward. Akira Asano held the scabbard with one hand and grasped the handle tightly with the other, following closely behind him. That's because. Schroeder obviously wanted to say something more, but Kaylan immediately and ruthlessly interrupted him. We are about to start moving forward, please remain silent to avoid causing interference. Although the power armors of both of them are equipped with a large number of detection equipment, what Kaylan trusts most is Asano Akira's ears. Akira Asano's hearing is not a pure hearing, to be precise. His main organ for receiving sound is not his ears, but the idea tentacles centered on him and spreading in all directions. As we all know, sound is a wave. For a normal human being, only when sound waves are collected by the auricle along a medium such as air, and then transmitted along the external auditory canal to the tympanic membrane, the tympanic membrane and ossicles amplify the vibration of the sound wave, and then through a series of complex transformation processes, this vibration is converted into nerve electrical signals and transmitted to the auditory center. Only then can humans hear sounds. For Asano Akira, the sound waves have already been captured by those thought tentacles before they come into contact with his body. Therefore, he can naturally hear more things and understand them more clearly than ordinary people. After walking less than 100 meters, a hell-like scene appeared in front of Kailan. Hundreds of staff from the institute lay scattered on the street, their iconic white coats stained with dark red blood, and the buildings nearby were covered with dense bullet holes. Before Kailan got close, he smelled a strong smell of blood. Even a breathing mask with its own filtering function couldn't completely eradicate the smell of blood in the air. The further he walked, the more corpses he saw in his field of vision. Many, he could even clearly feel the sticky feeling coming from the soles of his feet with every step he took. Only a few hours had passed since these people were killed, and the blood flowing had not yet completely coagulated. A slurry layer was formed on the ground that was 2 centimeters thick and sticky to the touch. I have arrived at the first interface. There are at least 600 human corpses here, most of them concentrated at the intersection. Kailan squatted down and reported to the rear headquarters while looking through the nearby corpses. These corpses were all killed by firearms. I saw no signs of being infected by memes on their bodies. These people should be the victims who appeared after the first batch of autonomous robots entered the contaminated area an hour and a half after the incident. Schroeder said in a heavy tone, because autonomous robots cannot recognize memes, the AI automatically mistook the eyeballs that were highly similar to the meme as the target of attack. These people should have been accidentally killed by autonomous robots. Each of these people can be regarded as a valuable asset of the Institute, right? Kailan said. For the scholars on the Ark, being able to enter the Institute is almost the ultimate goal in this life. This thing is just like the old era is like the Ivy League. If you take any person outside, they are all great people. But at this intersection, a group of human robots killed hundreds of them like chickens. The crew members should be very distressed. Actually. Schroeder hesitated for a moment, then continued, even if they were not killed by autonomous robots, it would be difficult for them to survive. At that time, the entire contaminated area had been closed, and according to regulations, it was impossible to release them. For this group of people who come out, if they stay inside, there is only one ending. Infected Lin Kaiming's voice interrupted. Yes, according to the meaning of the Undead Crew Association, the situation of 0 survivors in the contaminated area should have been acquiesced. Schroeder continued, even if you encounter survivors asking for help, you can ignore them. Please be sure to make the main task your first priority. You won't save him even if you die, Kailan asked supplementarily. Right. It's absolutely amazing. Even if this incident can be ended successfully, the Institute will probably be severely damaged. Actually, my strength has been greatly weakened now. Schroeder sighed. Originally, the Institute's staff, excluding security, service staff, and engineering departments, totaled 2,449 people. What about now? The only people left now are the people from the temporary countermeasures group. Kailan was stunned for a moment. He had gone to see the countermeasures team before. Counting those students who were not qualified to discuss and could only watch from the sidelines, the entire countermeasures team totaled less than 100 people. Although Kailan has never had a good impression of this group of lunatics, he has to admit that ARC's current level of technology depends entirely on these lunatics. In the 50 years since landing on planet Alpha, the level of human science and technology has advanced enough to be equivalent to the 500 years on Earth, or even more. Although a large part of these developments come from the technology left behind by the Alpha civilization, without this group of people to analyze, transform, and apply the technology of Alpha civilization, it would be very difficult for humans to even gain a foothold on this planet. The loss of high-end talents is far more regrettable than the loss of property. These talents cannot be measured by numbers, and they can even be measured in numbers. Each of them is a combination of genius and hard work. They are rare and rare. No matter how much resources you have, you may not be able to cultivate such an expert, but now, less than 10% of this group of people died in the blink of an eye. Kaylan felt that if he were sitting in the undead crew meeting's seat, he would be so angry that he would faint. After the inspection, there are a total of 709 corpses at the street intersection, and none of them are infected. Kaylan put away the teasing tone before and said seriously. Receive. I'm going to move on. Wait a minute. Kaylan had just stepped over a body lying face down on the ground, and suddenly stepped back. What's wrong? A unique body was found. He was not shot to death. Has he been infected by a meme? Schroeder asked. No. Sync images. Yes. Kaylan nodded and entered a series of instructions on the control terminal. A red warning border immediately lit up on the edge of his helmet display. This indicated that everything he was seeing now was transmitted back to the rear headquarters in real time. If he sees the meme carrier now, the entire crisis management department will probably be dismissed, Kaylan thought to himself, and locked his perspective on the corpse on the ground. To be precise, it was on these two parts of the corpse. This corpse was cut off at the waist by something sharp, and the fracture was very smooth, and those autonomous robots that entered the contaminated area were not equipped with such weapons. P.S. The last monthly ticket double event of this year will start after midnight on the 29th. The monthly tickets you have saved can be voted out later, although I am afraid that I will not reach 1,000 chapters this month. I still have to shout, please monthly ticket, please support. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 572. This injury was not caused by the autonomous robot, Schroeder said. You said nonsense, Kaylan said coldly. It seems that something escaped from the underground ice house of the Institute. Although they had been mentally prepared for this before entering the contaminated area, they only encountered the traces left by these things at the first street intersection, which made Kaylan feel a little uncomfortable. Premonition. The situation in the polluted area seemed to be more severe than expected. This was only the outermost part of the polluted area. He simply didn't want to think about what the experimental building and underground ice house in the central area would look like now. There is movement, at this time, Akira Asano suddenly reminded, in our 3 o'clock direction. The distance is 81 meters and the height is 45 meters. Kaylan immediately turned off the picture synchronization and looked up in the direction indicated by Asano. Akira, he saw a giant mosquito-like crustacean landing on the top of a tall building. This big mosquito had 3 pairs of unfolded lengths. The wings were over 10 meters long but almost transparent. If it weren't for the slender blood vessels inside the wings that were like veins on leaves, Kaylan wouldn't even be able to see clearly the outlines of the 3 pairs of wings. On its head, there are 2 huge compound eyes that occupy more than half of the head. The 2-meter-long spike-like mouthparts below the compound eyes are not so much needles as they are a sharp spear. There are also serrated spines on both sides of the mouthparts. After seeing the mouthparts of this shape, Kaylan was almost certain that the body that was cut into 2 parts should be thanks to this big mosquito. The purpose of this thing should be similar to that of mosquitoes on Earth. It is used to pierce the body of prey and suck blood, but for it, the size of prey like humans is really too small, even with the spiked mouthparts. It can penetrate the body of the prey. As long as the prey struggles a little, it will penetrate from the other end of the body, or simply cut the entire body into fragmented pieces of meat. If he had to find a blood-sucking partner with a matching body shape for this big mosquito, Kaylan felt that a big guy like Leviathan would be quite suitable. Because he was not sure whether the big mosquito was infected by a meme, Kaylan did not dare to transmit the real-time picture back to the command center, so he could only describe its characteristics in words. This thing should be the collection of the Institute, right? Kaylan pointed the gun in his hand at the big mosquito on the roof and asked, what is its weakness? According to your description, what you encountered should be the 6-winged gray mosquito, an indigenous creature captured from the gray mud swamp. However, according to the information provided by the Institute, the adult six-winged gray mosquito has the largest wingspan. It will not exceed half a meter. As for the underground icehouse, there are indeed a batch of six-winged gray mosquito specimens sealed, but the largest one among them is only 35 centimeters long, Schroeder said. I understand, it's a mutant, Kaylan replied. It seems that the big mosquito either ate something it shouldn't have eaten, or was infected by some weird virus or gene. The question now is, this thing is staring at me and Asano Akira. I feel that as long as we make any move, it will pounce on us immediately. The six-winged gray mosquito itself is not very aggressive. It will only hunt when it feels hungry. As long as you don't disturb it, maybe. You also said that this guy will only hunt when he is hungry. You have frozen him in the icehouse for so many years. His digestive system should be cleaner than a pauper's wallet, right? The hound's voice suddenly intervened. Schroeder was interrupted. At his strong request, everyone in the god hunting group also gained access to the command center. No, old dog, I don't think it's a question of whether it's hungry or not. Kaylan lowered his voice. There are so many corpses here, and blood is flowing all over the floor, but it has no expression for these things. The desire to eat, Chief Schroeder, this kind of mosquito shouldn't only eat fresh food, right? In addition to sucking the blood of prey, the six-winged gray mosquito can also be regarded as a scavenger. In areas where a large number of six-winged gray mosquitoes gather in the gray mud swamp, 9 out of 10 there will be large indigenous species. Compared with fresh blood, they even prefer to suck corpse fluid after being corrupted by microorganisms, because it is richer in nutrients than blood, and they are immune to most viruses and bacteria produced by corpse decay. A voice that Kaylan had never heard before said, "Who are you?" Dr. John Norrison, a member of the countermeasures team and an expert on indigenous biology on Alpha Planet Linkiming, introduced. The six-winged gray mosquitoes in the underground icehouse were basically captured by my team in the mud swamp. Dr. Norrison continued, judging from the sound of his voice, he should be an old man in his twilight years. Okay, Dr. Norrison, since this is your collection, can you tell me what is the weakness of this mosquito? The six-winged gray mosquito has no weaknesses, because its whole body is very fragile. We must be very careful when capturing it to ensure that its body will not be damaged. A small caliber fully automatic self-defense weapon can kill it. The only time these indigenous creatures can pose a threat to humans is probably when there are more than 10,000 of them at the same time, Dr. Norrison said. Okay, then I will try to attack its torso. Kaylan set the gauze assault rifle in his hand to the overload charging mode. In a short period of 1.5 seconds, a row of blue indicators on both sides of the barrel, the lights turned on one after another, and the big mosquito parked on the roof of the building was locked by the intelligent fire control system of the power armor. Kaylan didn't even need to aim manually, all he had to do was pull the trigger. Buzz. A buzzer sounded inside the barrel of the gun, and the magnetic warhead that escaped the shackles turned into a stream of blue light and headed straight for the target. Although the mutated six-winged gray mosquito flew up the moment the shot was fired, it was still smaller than the original one. Even with a charged shot at a speed of over 4,000 meters per second, its reaction speed was still half a chip too slow. Bang! After the blue streamer hit the abdomen of the mutated six-winged gray mosquito, Kaylan heard the popping sound caused by the high-speed flying warhead tearing the air to form a vacuum. However, after he saw the actual hit effect, the old saying couldn't help but coming out of my head. Thunder, little rain. This powerful shot only left an inconspicuous groove on the six-winged gray mosquito's carapace. The warhead did not penetrate the hard carapace, but slid along the arc of the carapace, blasting into the elevator machine room on the roof of a nearby building. On the contrary, 2 large irregular holes with a diameter of more than 2 meters were blasted out in the wall of the elevator machine room. Kaylan knew the power of the shot just now. Although the charging time was only a short period of 1.5 seconds, the voltage was already overloaded to more than 15 times the rated load within 1.5 seconds. This charging mode may even cause permanent damage to the coil acceleration array in the barrel, but in exchange it is a charged blow that is several times more powerful. The charged blow of this gun was powerful enough to penetrate the frontal armor of all main battle tanks currently in service in ARC, but it was bounced off by the carapace of this mosquito. Dr. Norrison, this guy's mutation seems, a bit beyond belief. Kaylan said, the charged shot of the Z-79 Gauss assault rifle cannot even penetrate its exoskeleton. Before anyone from the command center could respond, the flying mutated six-winged gray mosquito had already swooped down towards Kaylan. Kaylan quickly turned his Gauss rifle back to rapid-fire mode and aimed at the giant thing that jumped down. Spilled out. This time, Kaylan aimed at the 3 pairs of high-frequency vibrating wings on its back. In an instant, dozens of light blue streams of light penetrated the wings of the six-winged gray mosquito. Compared to the exoskeleton, which was far stronger than tank armor, the wings were not that metamorphosed yet. However, shooting through the wings did not have any impact on the attack of the six-winged gray mosquito. Seeing that the spear-like mouthparts had already pierced the front, the next second, Kaylan was nailed to death with his armor on the ground. At this critical moment, Kaylan simply threw away the Gauss assault rifle in his hand. The energy shield generator in his left hand directly output the full power, and with his right hand, he flicked a high-frequency particle vibration dagger from it was thrown out of the hidden groove of the armor and held upside down in the hand. The spike-like mouthparts of the six-winged gray mosquito burst into flames the moment it came into contact with the energy shield. By the time it pierced the energy shield, the hardest layer of carapace on the surface had almost been ablated away. Kaylan raised the dagger and swung it forward, and immediately cut off most of the mouthpart. Then, he jumped up directly and hit the six-winged gray mosquito in mid-air with the energy shield. The flames immediately burned along the mouthparts and head of the big mosquito to the torso, along with the transparent. The wings were burned black and curled up. One of the six-winged gray mosquito's jointed limbs was swept hard, and Kaylan was sent flying directly. However, a second before being thrown out, Kaylan inserted the vibrating dagger into its huge compound eye with his backhand. Middle. Bang, Kaylan fell firmly into the pile of corpses, but fortunately the protective measures of the suit of armor were pretty good. Apart from the severe pain all over his body, he didn't even fall to one bone break. On the other hand, the situation of the six-winged gray mosquito is much worse than that of Kaylan. The vibrating dagger penetrated its compound eyes, almost turning its brain into a ball of paste, and a large amount of dark green mixed with dark red liquid continued the ground spurted out from the wound, and after the liquid came into contact with the flames on its body, it burned more violently. Soon, half of the six-winged gray mosquito's body was wrapped in raging flames. The six-winged gray mosquito with its brain destroyed was struggling desperately on the ground. Its jointed limbs were constantly pulling on the ground, and the corpse nearby was stirred up until it was bloody. Its fat abdomen was raised high, and a large amount of filth seemed to be escaping. It sprayed out and stuck to the building on the side of the street. Kaylan took a closer look and saw that these things that were sprayed out like diarrhea were also mixed with a large number of soybean-sized particles, which looked a bit like a top delicacy called caviar in the old era. Although Kaylan had always been, I can't understand why people from the old era admire this kind of disgusting looking food so much. When death comes, you must try your best to leave offspring. This should be regarded as an instinct of living things. Kaylan, who was lying on the ground, glanced at the insect eggs that were all over the wall and shook his head. He took out an incendiary bomb from his backpack, pulled the tab, and threw it hard. Asano Akira, get rid of this big mosquito. We have wasted too much time on this guy, Kaylan said. Asano Akira nodded, and rushed towards the building where the six-winged gray mosquitoes were originally stationed. The propellers on his back and the universal suction cups on the soles of his boots were activated at the same time. He moved along the path as if performing an acrobatic performance. He ran up the vertical glass wall for tens of meters, then kicked hard, and rolled backwards in the air, falling towards the six-winged gray mosquito dying in the middle of the road. Base. The long knife was unsheathed, and the tip of the knife penetrated directly into the back of the six-winged gray mosquito's head. Akira Asano, who landed on the six-winged gray mosquito's back, just bent his knees slightly to resolve the falling momentum, and held the handle of the knife tightly with both hands. Without pulling out the blade, he just ran towards the tail of the six-winged gray mosquito. The blade of the Nino alloy sword cut open the body of the six-winged gray mosquito directly along the center line. Although this insect-like indigenous creature does not have a spine, the nerve center hidden under the hard exoskeleton was discovered by Akira Asano. This knife was completely destroyed, and the six-winged gray mosquito that was still struggling suddenly stopped moving, leaving only its jointed limbs drooping on the ground that were still twitching from time to time. The sword technique is very precise. K-Lan, who got up from the ground and gave a thumbs up to Asano Akira, not caring whether Asano Akira could see it, the nerve center of this insect was destroyed with one knife. Those who play anatomy are quite skilled. I don't understand the physical structure of this creature. Akira Asano shook his head. I just could feel that something special was flowing and passing there, so I chose those places as targets for attack. What you feel should be the bioelectrical signals transmitted in the nervous system. Can you also see the nervous system in the human body? Yes, but it's very blurry, not as clear as this insect, Asano Akira said. Yes, this guy is so big, the voltage is much stronger than that of humans. Hey, wait a minute. K-Lan suddenly stopped in the middle of speaking. Stand there first, don't come over. This the big mosquito seems to be the infected person of the meme. At this moment, the six wings of the six-winged gray mosquito had been almost completely burned, and at the base of its wings and in the gaps between its carapace, K-Lan actually saw dozens of densely packed particles of various sizes. One's eyes were squeezed together and kept squirming. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 573. I finally understand why this mosquito can get so humming big. K-Lan couldn't help but burst out a series of extremely dirty words from his mouth. These eyes were spinning around, but once K-Lan cast his gaze on them, they all stared at him invariably. Even though K-Lan has a naturally big heart, at this time, I couldn't help but feel my scalp tingling. I discovered the meme in the mutated six-winged gray mosquito and am preparing to dissect it, K-Lan said. At the front-line headquarters far away on the other end of the communication line, Schroeder and Lin Keiming heard the news, looked at each other, and subconsciously held their breath. K-Lan pulled out the high-frequency particle vibration dagger from the head of the six-winged gray mosquito. In order not to cause unnecessary damage, he also turned off the vibration function of the dagger. The high-frequency particle vibration dagger actually uses heating. The blade cast from a special alloy causes the molecules of the alloy to move at high speed, thereby forming a cutting force at the molecular level. Rather than cutting off the object, it would be more appropriate to say fuse. It is precisely for this reason that in order to enhance the life of the blade and make it more durable, the high-frequency particle vibration dagger when the vibration state is not turned on is not considered sharp. At best, it is equivalent to an unopened dagger. It's just a dull metal knife with a sharp edge. But at this time, the six-winged gray mosquito's carapace had been ablated by flames and was extremely fragile. K-Lan could easily break it off piece by piece with his power armor gauntlet. All he needed was a crowbar. Sharp or not, it doesn't really matter. I am expanding the carapace wound to expose more infected tissues, K-Lan reported to the command center in real time through voice while doing it. He found a cracked gap in the carapace, inserted the vibrating dagger into it, and then gently pried it open. A whole piece of palm-sized carapace was completely lifted open, revealing the lower part wrapped in mucus. of soft tissue. I don't know how to describe what I saw. You can imagine the same scene. It's like countless translucent fish eggs stacked together. They are constantly squirming, as if there are fry that will break out of the shell at any time. And something happened. However, what came out of it was not a living thing, but an organ similar to an eyeball. Kaylan took a deep breath. Although these eyeballs that were still in the process of development had not yet opened, he could still feel that they were looking at him through the thin layer of fascia, as if they were real. Such sight cannot be ignored at all. Even those without mature eyeballs seem to have the ability to mimetic contagion. You should be able to understand the scene I described, right? Yes, Schroeder's voice came from the earphones. You and Akira Asano show no signs of being infected by the meme, right? I can only say that no abnormalities have been found yet, Kaylan replied. He couldn't help but feel a little lucky that he had promptly interrupted the real-time video transmission with the headquarters when the mosquitoes appeared. Otherwise, the entire headquarters would have been taken down by now. He stretched out his hand and carefully picked up a fully mature eyeball. A sharp surgical blade popped out from the fingertips of his hand, cutting off the tissue at the base of the eyeball and separating it from the body of the six-winged gray mosquito. Come down. Kaylan placed the eyeball in the palm of his hand and observed it carefully. After being separated from the body of the six-winged gray mosquito, the eyeball seemed to be dead. The pupil gradually expanded, and the focus of his eyes also followed. No matter which angle Kaylan looked at, the creepy sense of looking at each other never appeared again. He turned his eyeball over, and behind it were several severed tendons, blood vessels, and nerves. Under strong light, through the retina covered with capillaries and nerves, he could even see the transparent vitreous body and nerves inside. The aqueous humor filling the gaps everywhere. This is almost exactly the same as the structure of the eyeballs of most mammals, especially humans. Ian's fingertips exerted a little force, and the quail egg-sized eyeball was instantly crushed and turned into a pool of blood, which stuck to his gauntlet and dripped continuously. These eyeballs are very fragile and can be said to be vulnerable, and they also do not have any attack capabilities other than infection. If one of these eyeballs is soaked alone in a glass jar filled with formalin solution, people who see it will only think that it is an organ specimen removed from a person, rather than a dangerous thing. Meme carrier. After I separated the meme from the host vector, I unexpectedly discovered that the meme seemed to have lost its infectivity, but I was unable to make an accurate judgment, Kaylan told the people at the command center. Why do you think memes lose their contagion after being separated from their host? Schroeder asked immediately. Because the moment the eyeball was taken off, it was dead. When I looked at those living eyeballs, I felt like I was being stared at. Even though I was not infected, I felt like I was being stared at. It also feels hairy, but the dead eyeballs don't give me this feeling. We need a front-on high-definition picture of a dead eyeball. Remember to use an encrypted channel to transmit it, Schroeder said. Kaylan knew that Schroeder asked him for this picture to verify his guess. As for the method of verification, naturally it was to find a living person as a test subject and let him look directly at the unprocessed picture. This verification method is cruel and even inhumane, but it is also the most efficient and accurate. After the mimetic infection incident broke out, many people have died, and these dead people, whether they are professors of the institute or senior officials of the Crisis Management Department, Security Bureau, and military, their lives are very valuable. Although Kaylan believes that all people are created equal, he has to admit that there are indeed huge differences in value between people. A minor who has not even completed the compulsory education stage, the value of his life is at most dozens or hundreds of tons of unrefined crude ore. If he wants to make the best use of it, at most he can be regarded as an experimental body in a sick village. However, the new mining equipment invented by a researcher in the equipment department can increase the output of each of these miners several times or even more than 10 times. The value between the two is higher and the lower, it's so obvious. If the life of an ordinary person could be exchanged for the life of a researcher, No matter whether it was the Crisis Management Department or the Undead Crew Association, they would do it without hesitation, not to mention the current moment where every second is needed. 5 minutes later, Schroeder's voice sounded in the communication channel again. It has been tested and your guess is correct. The dead eyeball is not contagious. In other words, it carries the meme, has dissipated. But the question now is, Schroeder continued, how can we be sure that it is dead? During the early blockade, there were also cases where soldiers were injured by a small piece of mutilated corpse. There are examples of eyeballs being infected, and even during the process of burning corpses, some people were infected by the eyeballs that had mostly turned into charcoal. This definition standard is difficult to determine. The preliminary judgment is that the eyeball needs to be completely separated from the host, that is, all the tendons, blood vessels, and nerves at the root are cut off. Kaylan replied. In addition, the dead eyeball will have pupils just like when humans die. The characteristics of diffusion and absence of consciousness should be used as the criterion. But this standard has no practical significance. Schroeder's words were mixed with a wry smile. We can't judge it with the naked eye, and AI can't recognize it either. At this point, Schroeder suddenly paused. Then, he and Kaylan said in unison, if it is a dead eyeball, maybe AI can recognize it. I will immediately start arranging relevant experiments. You continue to move forward. Time is running out. Since the six-winged gray mosquito has escaped, it means that the underground icehouse of the Institute may have lost power. The longer it takes, the more time it takes to thaw. The more specimens will be restored to freedom in the future. I know. Kaylan nodded and stood up. But before he had gone a few steps, he seemed to have remembered something, turned back to the body of the six-winged gray mosquito, and took off an eyeball again. Asano, come here and take off the gauntlet on your right hand, Kaylan said to Asano Akira. The latter did it without much thought, and Kaylan placed the cold, sticky eyeball in his palm. Feel it. Can you guess what this is? Like an eyeball. Asano Akira hesitated for 2 seconds before replying. Are you sure you came to the conclusion based on your own feelings instead of guessing? Kaylan asked further. Sure. Hearing Asano Akira's answer, Kaylan suddenly fell into deep thought. Akira Asano's eyes are invisible, and because of this, he is completely immune to memes that rely on vision to spread. And unlike him, he has never witnessed a meme with his own eyes. Naturally, he does not have preconceived concepts and will not be affected by his own subjective will. Kaylan did not tell Asano Akira through other information. What was in his hand? Under these various conditions, it was basically certain that the information collected by his touch was indeed a cold, slimy eyeball. These eyeballs are real, not a mask brought about by memes, or something else. The speculation that eyeballs do not exist in the real world, but only exist in cognition raised in the previous discussion between Kaylan and Lin Kaiming can be ruled out. Unless, this meme can also interfere with and affect human touch or consciousness, but if it really has this ability, Asano Akira should have been infected by now. This is good news, at least it means that these memes have physical entities. Since they have physical entities, they can naturally be removed through physical means. I am afraid that memes only exist in cognition. In this way, as long as any of the people affected by this incident have not completely erased the memories related to memes in their brains, if he deletes it, then this meme will lurk in his memory, and then produce more terrifying mutations and more deadly secondary outbreaks. When that time comes, it is estimated that the undead crew will be helpless. Humans can only play GG. However, judging from the information currently available, this meme has not yet metamorphosed to that extent, but if it evolves a few more times, everything will be hard to say. Lin Kaiming is right, there is indeed not much time left for them. Compared with the evolutionary mutation of memes, those monster specimens that ran out of the underground icehouse can only be regarded as insignificant little troubles. Kaylan took out 2 pieces of clay explosives, stretched them and rubbed them together, inserted the detonator, and then stuffed them under the carapace of the six-winged gray mosquito. After retreating a dozen steps, he directly pressed the detonation button. The structure of the eyeball itself is very fragile, and an explosive of this magnitude is enough to wipe it out along with the memes they carry. Come on, Asano, we have to hurry up. P.S. Conventional disclaimer: all the scientific knowledge and theories involving biological mutation and high-frequency vibration weapons in this chapter are fictional and belong to the needs of the plot. Please do not match them. If there are any similarities, it is because I referred to them when writing some documents found online. Of course, the authenticity of these documents is also questionable, and it cannot be ruled out that they contain elements such as street stall literature, folk science, and two-dimensional elements. Please be gentle with your rhetoric. PPS. Thanks to Sopudeong for the 5,000 starting coins, thanks to Gable11 for the 100 starting coins. Today is the second day of double monthly tickets. Yesterday you gave me a surprise. The 400 monthly tickets were directly raised to 700 monthly tickets. For me, there are 300 more tickets in one day. If there are still 300 more on the 30th and 31st, if I get a monthly pass, I can reach the 1000 mark in the last month of this year. So, here, I am going to ask for monthly tickets for the last time in 2021, taking advantage of the double and the end of the year. Everyone who has a monthly ticket will be rewarded a little less. You can only get more than 1,000 tickets to participate in the monthly writer lottery. Although I draw a guaranteed life of 100 yuan every time, what if my luck breaks out this month? If there are still lottery opportunities next month, up to 1,000 monthly tickets, regardless of whether the lottery is guaranteed or not, I will divide half of the amount drawn and give out red envelopes to the readers. Remember to grab it when the time comes. Finally, I wish you all a happy new year in advance, good health, and all the best in 2022. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 574. A dull explosion came from the six-winged gray mosquito's body. Keilan and Asano Akira picked up the equipment that fell on the ground and continued to move forward. The storage area for the six-winged gray mosquito samples is Area G on the first floor of the underground icehouse. When the underground icehouse loses power, the refrigeration equipment in this area is indeed the first to stop operating, Schroeder said on the communication channel. Lee said, as for highly threatening experimental samples such as erosion seeds, they are all sealed in the 3 zones A, B, and C on the 4th floor. These 3 zones have their own power generation equipment. Even if the power is cut off, the power generation equipment the fuel stored inside can also last for more than 12 hours, ensuring that the temperature of the 4th layer will not rise. That means we have to solve the problem within 12 hours after the incident. It is best within 10 hours, we have to reserve time for secondary cleaning and repair of the circuit, Schroeder said. Okay, I understand. Is the 4th floor the deepest floor of the underground icehouse? Keilan asked casually. However, Schroeder's answer made him feel the urge to curse again. Actually, there is a 5th floor. 5th floor? Monsters such as erosion seeds are sealed in the 4th floor. So what kind of monsters are hidden in the 5th floor? Is it an SP-type mutant? Or is it the remains of a prehistoric species? Keilan couldn't help but feel. With a big head, he gritted his teeth and asked, are these lunatics really not afraid of death, bringing everything to the Ark? They have not considered what if one day, the things in the underground icehouse break through, who will end them? The crisis management department was set up for unexpected situations like that, Schroeder replied immediately. Then can you tell me what collections are on the 5th floor? If they really escape, I can be prepared. I'm sorry, the contents of the 5th floor are the highest level secrets of the Ark. Without the authorization of the Undead Crew Association, I cannot reveal any relevant information to you. Keilan did not expect that Schroeder would reject his request this time. Requested, but I can assure you that the containment objects on the 5th floor will never be awakened. What guarantee do you have? Keilan asked with some dissatisfaction. The entire institute is dead and there are less than 100 people left. Do you think I will still believe your words that there will never be any problems? Are there any safety measures? This is simply outrageous. Opening the door to outrageous people is outrageous. Do you know the Heinrich safety law of the old era? Kaylan continued, behind every major accident, there are at least 29 minor accidents and 300 potential accidents. Hidden dangers, and each of these 300 potential hidden dangers has the potential to turn into the major accident we encountered today. As a member of the Crisis Management Department, it is impossible for you not to understand this truth. Actually, the fifth floor of the underground icehouse is independent of the first four floors. Schroeder hesitated for a moment, then spoke. The so-called fifth floor is actually a completely sealed alloy container. It was settled into the cooling pool of the Ark's main reactor. The surroundings of the container were filled with a large amount of flowing liquid nitrogen, and the interior maintained a low temperature of -200 degrees Celsius all year round. It was impossible for anything to escape in that state. Come out. Schroeder paused and added, in fact, you can completely exclude the fifth level of the underground icehouse from the action plan. If I were you, I wouldn't say it so absolutely. Kaylan sighed helplessly. He couldn't help but think of the experimental subject number 1197 imprisoned by the Alpha civilization under the bottomless sinkhole. Fortunately, the Alphas had already disappeared from the planet when this guy escaped. Otherwise, what awaits them would probably not be a massacre with completely unequal strength. Kaylan and Asano Akira turned a corner, and suddenly, dozens of autonomous robots came into their sight. These robots seemed to have been unplugged at the same time, still maintaining the same posture as when they were advancing along the street. Command, I found a group of lost autonomous robots, Kaylan said. They are in the second fork on the right side of Galileo Avenue. Kaylan said as he sent the captured images back to the command center. Non-living things like robots cannot be memified. Risk of infection, as long as you don't check their operation records, these things are relatively safe. Judging from the body number, this is the second batch of autonomous robots to be released into the contaminated area. Their original mission should be to enter the underground icehouse and repair the damaged circuits. According to the images you sent back, preliminary judgment shows that this robot team may have encountered a high-power electromagnetic pulse attack. While Schroeder was talking, Kaylan had already walked up to a robot, opened the cover at the back of the neck, and connected the data cable to the access socket. The chip has been completely burned, and no records have been left, Kaylan said. I also think it is a high-power EMP, but then again, among the indigenous creatures of Alpha Planet, there are some with similar abilities. There are quite a few species, and if possible, I need a list of the underground ice houses for comparison. The list of underground ice houses is in my mind, Schroeder replied. Among all the contained objects, there are a total of 27 species of indigenous creatures with the ability to create electromagnetic pulses. 6 artifacts of the Alpha civilization found in the ruins, 11 types, 57 of which are inanimate dead objects, and 4 are unnatural biological weapons. There should be a mutant species of erosion that can release EMP, right? Kaylan said as he took out a magazine with a yellow and black warning mark from his backpack and inserted it into the chest. In the magazine pouch, 2 of the 4 biochemical weapons I mentioned are mutants of the seed of corrosion, and the other 2 are undifferentiated semi-finished products that are not threatening. I have already passed on the specific information to you. Looking at the dense list that appeared in front of him, Kaylan smiled bitterly and said, the search range is really large. I know that the Institute must have some specimens of indigenous creatures, but I didn't expect there to be so many. Although Kaylan said that there are many types of indigenous creatures with the ability to produce electromagnetic pulses, this many is only a relative term. In fact, including various rare subspecies, there are only more than 30 in total. There are several indigenous creatures with this ability. It turned out that there were 27 species in this underground icehouse alone, almost all of them Kaylan couldn't help but be curious about the capacity of this underground ice house that only heard of its name but had never been seen by outsiders. On the Ark, the area for human habitation and activities actually only accounts for about 1/5 of the entire internal space of the Ark. Even so, the vast majority of human beings will not be able to visit every corner of this 1/5 of the area in their lifetime, let alone the remaining 4/5. Kaylan couldn't help but have a thought flash through his mind: the Undead Crew Association, the Crisis Management Department, the underground ice storage, just on this colonial ship built by humans. How many secrets did he not know? He always felt that there was a vague answer deep in his memory, but whenever he was about to touch the answer, an invisible force would push his consciousness out, so that he would never be able to see what was hidden. The truth behind the fog. Why do I have this feeling? Is this also due to the broken stone tablet? However, what he glimpsed in the blurred and fragmented memory fragments was clearly the outline of Noah's Ark, and the stone tablet was obviously made much earlier than the time when humans on Earth proposed the Ark plan. Even if Alpha, no matter how advanced the civilization's technology is, it's impossible to predict what will happen tens of thousands of years from now, right? Wrong. Kaylan suddenly realized that he had fallen into a misunderstanding. If the stone tablet is an information storage device like a computer hard drive, then why can't it also be a recording device? When the Ark landed on planet Alpha, this stone tablet should still be lying intact in the sarcophagus of the glacier ruins. With the technology of the Alpha civilization, it was completely possible to scan the entire ship without anyone noticing. Noah's Ark can record this information. Even though the Alpha people have disappeared for tens of thousands of years, many of the automatic equipment they left behind in the ruins are still in operation. If something as massive as the Ark landed on the surface of the planet, it is estimated that the detection equipment on the entire Alpha planet will be triggered. Although this explanation is a bit far-fetched, it is very reasonable. The function of the stone tablet is probably similar to the chronology of mankind. At this moment, Akira Asano's voice came back from the front. Did you find anything else? Only then did Kaylan realize that he had stood there stupidly for dozens of seconds, and quickly responded, no, I was just thinking about something and was a little distracted. Attendant? If necessary, you can open the cover on the inside of the armor. The control buttons of the automatic injector are hidden inside. Those drugs can help you, Schroeder immediately said in the communication channel. Don't worry, these are all. It is a clinically tested product and the side effects are almost negligible. Actually, it can't be regarded as being distracted. I was just checking the information you sent me, Kaylan said, but I found that this is a waste of time. If the monsters that killed these robots don't appear before us in the field of vision, then this information has no meaning, and if it jumps out, then there is no need for us to guess what it is through this pile of information. That seems to be the case. Schroeder was obviously stunned for a moment. If the specimens that broke through the containment did not cause any obstacles to you, the follow-up cleanup team will be responsible for solving them. We really don't need to. This is a waste of time at this juncture. Even though there is a high probability that these biological specimens have been infected by the meme, as long as Kaylan and the others can deal with the main body of the meme, then the sub-memes carried by these infected host carriers will also lose effectiveness. Kaylan simply started running and headed straight for the experimental building in the central area. According to conventional combat ideas, when entering such an area where dangers exist everywhere, the most correct method should be to advance step by step and slowly, cleaning and emptying room by room, building by building, and street by street. However, this requires a lot of manpower and time. If Kaylan and Asano Akira want to empty out the entire Institute headquarters, it is estimated that a month will not be enough. They can only choose to be reckless and head straight to the target location. If there is something blocking the road, for example, the long-haired beast that suddenly broke through the glass wall of a restaurant and blocked the two people in front of them, well, to be precise, it should be a meme, a long-haired beast of burden that mutates after infection. The long-haired beast of burden is a plant-eating mammal that lives in the cold tundra of planet Alpha. It is one of the few indigenous creatures on planet Alpha that can be considered docile. Many exile settlements are even partially located in cold zones. Some long-haired beasts of burden are domesticated at transit stations and military bases to be used as draft animals. They are very useful both for carrying things and as mounts. The only drawback is probably that the meat of this creature is inedible, in order to neutralize the planet Alpha. Those highly poisonous plants, the long-haired beasts of burden, will secrete a substance that is also highly toxic to humans. This substance will spread to every muscle of the long-haired beasts along with body fluids and blood. As long as a few milligrams of this substance enter the human body's circulatory system, it can only kill a person. However, as long as you don't think about eating meat, this animal is very safe for humans. Even if you rush up and kick it, it will not fight back. It's just that, the long-haired beast that appeared in front of Keilan and Asano Akira obviously had nothing to do with the word tame. P.S. A statement with a strong desire to survive. Readers of my novels, I think most people should know the origin of the concept of mimetic contagion, but I kindly ask everyone to try not to mention the S that begins with it when commenting in the name of the Foundation. This series of works has been characterized as insole. The novels originally based on this theme at Kidian have either been renamed or removed from the shelves. I don't want to be blocked from books and chapters for this reason. In addition, some parts of yesterday's chapter have been partially modified due to uncomfortable descriptions. If you want to see the original version, you can join the reader group. The group account is at the bottom of the introduction on the book's details page. You can check it with 500 fan points. PPS. Thank you to the Reading Giraffe for the 5,000 starting coins. Thank you to the book friend 201805301129420222 and leader Knowering Name for the 1,500 starting coins. Thank you to Canoe Crossing the Other Shore for the 100 starting coins. As a side note, the leader, please try not to use your iPhone to reward if you don't have a monthly pass on hand. Just forget it. There is no need to spend money to reward for the monthly pass.